It was a crisp Thursday morning in Silicon Valley when Elon Musk walked into the sprawling tech conference. The event was buzzing with the usual mix of excitement and anticipation. Entrepreneurs, engineers, investors, and dreamers from around the globe all gathered to showcase the latest innovations in tech. Drones zipped overhead, and virtual reality displays illuminated the walls. But Elon wasn't paying much attention to the gadgets or the prototypes. He was here for one thing only: to talk about the future. As he navigated through the crowd, a figure caught his eye. A boy, no older than 7, was standing near the edge of the room, his small frame almost lost among the towering adults. But there was something about him. He didn't look like any other kid at the event. His eyes were sharp, his gaze focused on Elon as if he were waiting for him. The boy wasn't playing with gadgets or chatting with anyone else. He was studying, observing, as though he understood more than the people around him. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? "Mr. Musk," the boy called out. Elon, curious and intrigued, turned to face him. "Yes? Can I ask you a question?" the boy said, his voice calm and steady, lacking the usual youthful excitement. There was no hesitation in his words. Elon raised an eyebrow. "Of course. What's your name?" "I'm Noah," the boy replied, his eyes not leaving Elon's. "I've been following your work for a while." Elon paused. Most kids his age were more interested in playing games or asking about Mars. But Noah was different. "You have, huh? What do you think about what I'm trying to do with SpaceX?" Noah didn't immediately respond. Instead, he asked, "What if we don't need to go to Mars?" Elon blinked, surprised by the question. "What do you mean?" Noah tilted his head slightly, as if he was waiting for Elon to catch up to his train of thought. "What if humanity doesn't need to travel to another planet to survive? What if the key to saving the world is already within us? In the way we think, in the way we live?" Elon felt a wave of intrigue, but also mild discomfort. This was no ordinary child. "You don't think we should colonize Mars?" Elon asked, genuinely curious. Noah shook his head slowly. "No, not if we're not ready to fix what's broken here first. We could use our minds to evolve. Maybe we don't need space travel at all." Elon's first instinct was to dismiss it as the ramblings of a child. After all, his life had been spent fighting for humanity's future beyond Earth. But there was something in Noah's words, something that made Elon pause. This wasn't just a random comment. This boy, this child, was challenging everything Elon believed about the future. "Why are you here, Noah?" Elon asked, his voice softening. "You're not just here to play around with gadgets, are you?" Noah's expression remained serious. "I'm here to talk to you. You're trying to change the world with your ideas, but what if the biggest innovation isn't in the stars, it's in our minds?" A beat passed, and Elon felt an unsettling mix of disbelief and fascination. It was as if the child had read his mind, poking at the very foundation of his beliefs. This was no coincidence. This was destiny, or something like it. "Okay, you've got my attention," Elon said, his curiosity now piqued. "Let's talk. You've got ideas, and I'd love to hear them." The two walked towards a quieter corner of the conference hall, away from the crowd of tech enthusiasts. As they walked, the sound of voices and machinery faded, and for the first time, Elon felt like he was about to hear something that would change everything. It wasn't a new space project, a new car, or a cutting-edge AI. It was something entirely different, something more. "I've been thinking about something," Noah said as they sat down at a small table, "and I want to ask you, what if the way we think can merge with technology? What if we could connect our brains to the machines we create and think together?" Elon's heart skipped a beat. This was not a typical conversation for a 7-year-old. Noah was speaking of the very concepts Elon had toyed with in his own mind, ideas about artificial intelligence, neural links, and the future of human cognition. But the way Noah phrased it, with such unassuming certainty, felt like a revelation. "You mean a brain-machine interface?" Elon asked, already mentally running through possibilities. Noah nodded. "Yes, but more than that. What if technology and humanity become one? Not just gadgets, but an extension of our minds. Our thoughts, our creativity, could be limitless. For a moment, Elon was speechless. This was exactly the kind of forward-thinking idea that he would typically encounter in the halls of a prestigious university, not from a young child who was still years away from formal education. "You're serious about this, aren't you?" Elon asked, his voice low. "Of course I am," Noah said, his voice unwavering. "I don't see why it has to be separate. If we can create machines that think, why can't we create a future where our minds work with them? Maybe we don't need to escape to Mars. Maybe we need to look inside ourselves first." Elon leaned back, processing what Noah had just said. This wasn't just a child's fantasy. It was a glimpse into a future that, while wild and impossible, was also fascinating and alluring. For a brief second, Elon imagined a world where humanity and technology were no longer separate but fused, where people could think alongside machines, advancing at a rate far beyond what they could achieve alone. "I don't know if anyone's ready for this kind of thinking yet," Elon admitted, his voice thoughtful. "But maybe it's time they were." Noah gave him a small smile, his eyes twinkling. "Maybe, but you have to start somewhere, right?" Just then, a voice called out from across the room. The event organizers were ready for Elon's keynote address. The conversation had to end. But as Elon stood up to leave, he looked at Noah, the child prodigy who had just offered him a glimpse of a future that seemed as fantastical as it was possible. "I think you've got something there, Noah," Elon said, offering a rare smile. "Maybe we'll talk more about this soon." And with that, Elon Musk walked away from a conversation that, in all likelihood, would change the course of his life forever. He didn't know it yet, but the questions Noah had posed weren't just theoretical. They were the start of something much bigger, a new way of thinking, a new way of looking at the world, and perhaps even the key to unlocking the future of humanity. The story of Noah began long before his encounter with Elon Musk. In fact, Noah's life was filled with extraordinary events that seemed impossible for a child of his age. Born in a quiet suburban neighborhood, he seemed, at first, to be like any other child. His parents, Tara and Daniel, were proud but bewildered by the strange intensity with which Noah approached the world. From an early age, it was clear that Noah wasn't like other kids. When other children were learning to tie their shoes, Noah was teaching himself to read by the age of 2. By 3, he was reading advanced books, some of them in subjects most adults wouldn't dare to tackle. His vocabulary was vast, and his understanding of concepts, science, philosophy, art, was so deep that his parents often had to remind themselves that he was just a toddler. But it wasn't just his intelligence that set him apart. It was the way he thought. While other kids played games or colored pictures, Noah spent hours staring out of windows, lost in thought. His mind constantly raced, seeking answers to questions he couldn't quite articulate. He asked his parents, "What is the nature of time? And how can the mind understand infinity?" These weren't the kinds of questions you would expect from a child learning to count. Tara and Daniel were both highly educated, Tara a neuroscientist and Daniel an engineer. They both had a deep appreciation for the wonders of the brain and technology, but they couldn't quite comprehend what was happening to their son. They sought answers from every corner of the academic world, but nothing seemed to explain Noah's brilliance. His pediatricians chalked it up to advanced development, while a few friends suggested he might have a photographic memory. But Noah was far beyond what they understood. When he turned 5, Noah developed an unusual fascination with technology. He wasn't interested in toys or games. Instead, he spent hours studying the inner workings of his parents' computers, often taking them apart to see how they worked. By the time he was 6, he had begun coding. Tara and Daniel, initially worried, were quickly astounded by his ability to write complex algorithms and create small programs. What was even more remarkable was the way Noah approached problems. Unlike other children, who tackled issues step by step, Noah approached each challenge as if it were a puzzle to be solved all at once. His mind didn't just break problems down into manageable pieces. It saw the whole picture instantly. When he was 7, Noah created his first program that simulated a neural network. He didn't fully understand the technical jargon behind it, but he intuitively grasped how the human brain functioned and mimicked it with software. The result was a rudimentary AI system that could learn from data, adapt to new inputs, and even predict outcomes based on past experiences. It was a stunning achievement, one that Noah explained in a simple, childlike way. The machine thinks, just like we do. Despite his genius, Noah remained a quiet, introspective child. He never craved attention. In fact, he often felt more comfortable in solitude, away from the other children at school who didn't understand him. His classmates would stare in awe as Noah solved math problems that stumped even the teachers, but Noah never boasted. He didn't want to stand out. He simply wanted to explore the world in his own way. His parents, proud yet concerned, tried to give Noah the guidance he needed. Tara often spoke to him about the ethical implications of his work, reminding him that intelligence and knowledge should be used for the good of others. "You're special, Noah," she would say, "but with that comes great responsibility." Daniel, a more pragmatic thinker, encouraged Noah to pursue his interests in technology, but he was often troubled by the depth of Noah's questions. The boy's mind seemed to reach further than they could follow, and that worried them. At the same time, Noah's ideas about the future began to evolve. He wasn't interested in solving conventional problems like curing diseases or building the most advanced technology. To him, these were just short-term fixes for much deeper, more fundamental issues. He wasn't satisfied with the idea of humanity merely surviving. He wanted to understand how to evolve beyond current human limitations, how to merge humanity with the tools it had created, to achieve something greater than the sum of its parts. But how could a child, still barely able to navigate the world of adults, express these profound ideas? Noah had no one to turn to for guidance, until one day, when he saw Elon Musk give a keynote address at a tech conference. Elon Musk, the visionary behind Tesla, SpaceX, and many other groundbreaking ventures, was the person Noah had been waiting for. He recognized in Elon the same deep curiosity about the world, the same drive to push beyond what seemed possible. But Noah didn't just admire Elon's work. He saw something in Elon that others didn't. He saw a man who was trying to reshape the world, but perhaps didn't understand the full potential of the tools he was wielding. Noah realized something that changed his perspective. The future wasn't just about exploring space or creating smarter machines. It was about merging human consciousness with technology. That's when Noah decided he needed to meet Elon Musk. He had to get his attention, to show him that there was a future beyond rockets and electric cars, one that involved the fusion of the human mind and artificial intelligence. Noah had always felt different, like an outsider in a world that couldn't quite keep up with his thoughts. But as the days passed, and as his understanding of his own potential grew, he began to realize that his ideas were not just revolutionary. They were, in many ways, dangerous. The more Noah thought about his vision, of merging human consciousness with artificial intelligence, of transcending the limitations of biology, the more he understood that such a concept would not be easily accepted. It wasn't just that people would resist his ideas. It was that they would fear them. The implications of connecting the human mind with technology were profound, and not everyone would be ready to embrace it. For a 7-year-old, this was a heavy realization. Yet Noah was unshaken. He believed his vision wasn't just possible, it was necessary. Humanity was stagnating, caught in the cycle of technological progress without truly understanding the fundamental potential of their own minds. We were already creating machines that could think for us, but what if we could integrate our minds directly with them? What if we could push the boundaries of human intellect to its limits? But that wasn't a conversation that could happen in the playground or in a classroom. His classmates, while brilliant in their own right, were more interested in the latest superhero movies or video games. They weren't thinking about the nature of consciousness or the future of the human race. And his teachers? They encouraged him to dream big, but their responses were often more dismissive than supportive. "Maybe one day, Noah," his teacher once said with a condescending smile, "but let's focus on your math homework first." Noah knew that his ideas were too advanced for most people to grasp, but that didn't make them any less important. He didn't need validation from other kids or adults. He needed someone who could see beyond the surface and understand the depth of his vision. That someone, he was certain, was Elon Musk. For weeks, Noah's obsession with reaching Elon grew. He read every article, watched every interview, and followed Elon's every move. Musk was trying to change the world, but in Noah's eyes, he was focusing on the wrong things. Space exploration was a noble goal, and electric cars were a worthy pursuit. but neither would address the root of humanity's stagnation. Humanity had to evolve on a mental and spiritual level, and Elon, who had built an empire on defying the limits of possibility, was the perfect person to understand. But the question remained: how could a 7-year-old boy, whose ideas defied conventional thinking, even get the attention of one of the most powerful men in the world? Noah began to formulate a plan. He knew it wouldn't be easy, but he also knew that nothing worth achieving ever was. So, he set out on a path that would force him to challenge not just Elon's thinking, but the entire system that dictated what was possible. He started by reaching out to Musk's team. Through a series of emails, he sent detailed proposals and papers outlining his ideas about human-machine fusion. He didn't hold back, presenting his vision in the clearest, most sophisticated terms he could muster. At first, he was met with silence. Then, after several attempts, he received a response, an email from one of Elon's assistants. "We've reviewed your emails, Noah. While your ideas are interesting, we suggest you focus on your education first before reaching out again. Elon is a very busy man." The reply stung. Noah felt a flicker of frustration, but he refused to give up. He wasn't going to let an email dismiss his future. He was ready to take the next step. That was when he decided he needed to get in front of Elon Musk himself. Noah had never been to a tech conference before, but he knew that if he could somehow get into one, it would be his chance. These events were the epicenter of innovation, where the world's brightest minds gathered to share their visions for the future. He knew that if he could just make Elon see him, understand the power of his ideas, then he could change everything. The question was, how? His parents, despite their growing concern over Noah's intense focus on these ideas, had always encouraged him to pursue his interests. Tara, a neuroscientist, and Daniel, an engineer, were well aware of their son's exceptional talents. They had tried to explain to him the value of patience, but they understood that Noah wasn't just some child prodigy who wanted to play with computers. He was a force of nature, driven by an insatiable curiosity that led him to question everything. But when Noah told them that he was planning to attend a tech conference, without an official invitation, they were less enthusiastic. "Noah, you can't just show up at an event like that," Daniel said one evening, rubbing his forehead. "You need credentials, you need permission. You're not going to get through the doors just because you want to meet Elon Musk." Noah didn't respond right away. He understood the practical barriers, but he also knew that there was something bigger at play. His mind didn't just work within the confines of traditional rules. He had always understood that to change the world, sometimes you had to break the rules. So, Noah did what he did best. He found a way. The conference was being held in San Francisco, only a few hours away from their home. Armed with a carefully crafted plan and his extraordinary ability to problem solve, Noah managed to arrange a way to sneak past security. He hacked into the event's registration system, something he'd done before for practice, and created a fake badge with his name on it. The badge read, "Noah Grayson, guest speaker." He wasn't just going to attend the conference. He was going to speak. The morning of the event arrived, and Noah's parents were none the wiser. They assumed he was going to be spending the day at a friend's house. Little did they know, their son was already en route to San Francisco, ready to change the future. As Noah walked through the towering doors of the conference hall, his heart raced. This was it, the moment that could define his life. He wasn't just going to meet Elon Musk. He was going to show him that the future of humanity was far more complex and far more extraordinary than anyone had imagined. Noah's journey had begun, but he had no idea what would happen when he finally stood face to face with the man he admired most. Would Elon listen? Would he understand? Or would Noah's revolution be crushed before it even began? Noah's heart raced as he stepped past the polished marble floor of the tech conference hall. The massive, open space was filled with cutting-edge displays, digital screens flashing the latest innovations in artificial intelligence, robotics, and renewable energy. People in suits and business attire milled about, exchanging business cards and ideas, all too absorbed in their conversations to notice the small boy walking confidently toward the stage. He was no longer just a curious child at a conference. He was on a mission. The badge around his neck, though unofficial, gave him the authority to move freely through the crowd. He made his way past security without hesitation, his mind focused solely on his destination, the main stage, where Elon Musk would later be delivering his keynote speech. Noah had carefully studied the schedule. Elon was slated to speak in the afternoon, but Noah had no intention of waiting. His plan was to take action before anyone could stop him. He had learned early in life that most people underestimated him. They saw a child. They didn't see a visionary. As he neared the stage, he caught sight of the event organizers. A group of well-dressed professionals were talking in hushed tones near the entrance, preparing for Elon's appearance. Noah could see the nervous energy on their faces, knowing that soon, all eyes would be on one of the most famous innovators of the century. But there was something they didn't expect, someone who wasn't supposed to be there at all. Noah walked up to one of the organizers. A tall woman with short black hair looked at him with a raised eyebrow. "Excuse me, can I help you?" she asked, her tone polite but firm. Noah stood up straighter, his voice calm and measured. "I'm Noah Grayson. I'm here to speak." The woman blinked in confusion. "I'm sorry, what?" Noah didn't flinch. "I'm the guest speaker for the session on neural augmentation and the future of human consciousness. My badge says I'm scheduled." The woman's confusion deepened. She glanced at his badge, which, while well-crafted, certainly wasn't an official one. It didn't take long for her to recognize that Noah wasn't on the official list of speakers. But instead of calling security immediately, she paused, assessing the situation. "You're a little young to be speaking," she said, her voice now laced with skepticism. Noah's eyes didn't waver. "I don't need to be old to have a vision. I have something that can change the way we look at the future of humanity, and I believe you and Mr. Musk are the ones who need to hear it." The woman looked at him for a long moment, clearly unsure of how to respond. She had seen her fair share of aspiring entrepreneurs, tech enthusiasts, and ambitious speakers, but never a child who was so confident, so self-assured in his knowledge. She glanced toward the entrance to the main stage, where other speakers were beginning to file in. A mix of seasoned professionals, young prodigies, and ambitious up-and-comers. The thought of turning Noah away felt wrong. She'd seen children at conferences before, bright-eyed, eager, but none of them had dared to approach her the way Noah did. There was something compelling about him, something she couldn't quite put her finger on. "What's your idea, Noah?" she asked, her voice softening a little. "What exactly do you want to talk about?" Noah didn't hesitate. "I want to talk about merging the human mind with artificial intelligence. It's the next step in evolution. If we don't connect our consciousness with the technology we're creating, we're going to miss the most important step in human development. We could unlock untapped potential in ways we can't even begin to understand." The organizer's eyes widened slightly, the weight of Noah's words sinking in. Her initial skepticism began to fade, replaced by curiosity. But she still had one question that she needed answered. "Why do you think Mr. Musk would want to hear you speak? You're just a—" "I'm not just a child," Noah interjected, his voice firm. "I'm the future, and I'm here to change how people think." There was a moment of silence. The woman turned back to the stage, her mind racing. She knew the event was about to start, and the pressure of everything running smoothly was weighing on her. But something about Noah's calm certainty made her hesitate. She hadn't felt this sense of urgency in a while, this pull to listen. "I'll let you in," she said, finally. "But you better be ready. The crowd isn't going to be easy to impress." Noah nodded, his expression unwavering. "I'm ready." A few minutes later, Noah found himself standing backstage, waiting for his moment. He could hear the buzz of the audience outside, murmurs of anticipation growing louder with every passing second. Elon Musk would be speaking soon. But before him was the opportunity to confront him, to present his vision to the man who had redefined what was possible. He wasn't nervous. He had faced challenges his entire life, from being dismissed by adults to being misunderstood by his peers. But standing here, in front of a room full of the brightest minds in the tech world, was different. This wasn't just about impressing them. It was about showing them something they hadn't seen before. It was about proving that the future wasn't about space exploration or electric cars. It was about understanding what it meant to be human and how technology could help us evolve. As the organizer walked past him to the side of the stage, she gave him a quick nod. "You're up next," she whispered. Noah stood tall. He had worked his entire life for this moment. Everything he had done, everything he had learned, had led to this. He wasn't just a kid anymore. He was someone who saw the future, and he was ready to show it. The moment had arrived. The audience went quiet as the lights dimmed. A large screen displayed Elon Musk's name in bold, bright letters, signaling the start of the keynote speech. But just as the lights shifted to reveal Elon, the event organizer stepped forward. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. "Before Mr. Musk begins, we have an unexpected speaker, a young visionary, who has something truly remarkable to share with us. Please welcome Noah Grayson." A ripple of confusion spread through the crowd as Noah walked onto the stage. They hadn't been expecting a child, much less one with such a confident stride. Whispers filled the room, and even a few chuckles echoed in the back. But Noah didn't notice. He was focused only on one thing: Elon Musk. As Noah approached the microphone, he looked at the audience for a moment, then turned to face the man who would change his life forever. Elon Musk was sitting at the front of the room, his gaze sharp and calculating. He had just taken a seat for his keynote, but he, too, couldn't help but be intrigued by the young boy standing before him. Noah spoke first. "Elon," Noah said, his voice carrying the weight of someone far older than his years. "I know you're here to talk about the future, but I have a question. What if the future isn't about rockets, cars, or even AI? What if it's about the evolution of the human mind, and how we can connect it with the very machines we're building?" The room fell into an uneasy silence as Noah's words echoed through the air. The audience was still processing the shock of seeing a child, no older than 7, standing confidently on the stage. But Noah wasn't concerned with their skepticism. His eyes locked onto Elon Musk's face, searching for a sign. Any sign that he was being heard. Noah took a deep breath, letting the weight of his ideas sink in. This was it, the moment he had been working toward for so long. He wasn't just presenting his ideas to a room full of tech enthusiasts. He was talking to the man whose work he admired, whose innovative spirit he believed could help humanity transcend its current limitations. The crowd was still murmuring, unsure of how to react. Some people leaned forward, intrigued, while others crossed their arms, whispering among themselves. But Noah didn't wait for their approval. He continued, his voice steady and clear. "What if we stopped thinking of technology as a tool to help us do things," he said, "and started thinking of it as a tool to help us become something more? Imagine if our minds could be directly connected to machines. What if we could interface with artificial intelligence in real time, and our thoughts could shape the world instantly? No more keyboards, no more screens. Just pure, direct communication between the human mind and the digital world." A stunned silence followed. Noah paused, letting his words settle. He knew that the idea he was proposing was far beyond the conventional thinking of the time. But to him, it made perfect sense. Humanity was already building machines that could think for us, solve problems faster than we could. But why stop there? Why not merge our consciousness with those machines, to evolve and push the boundaries of what it meant to be human? "Elon," Noah continued, his gaze unwavering, "you've made incredible advances with Tesla and SpaceX. But the next great leap for humanity isn't going to come from reaching Mars or building electric cars. It's going to come from within. The mind is the last frontier. And technology, true technology, will allow us to explore it like never before. If we merge human consciousness with AI, we can unlock a whole new dimension of creativity, intelligence, and potential." Noah paused again, his words lingering in the air. This time, the audience's murmurs were louder, more pronounced. Some people were clearly uncomfortable with the concept, while others seemed captivated by the idea. But it was Elon Musk who held Noah's attention. Elon, who had heard countless presentations from brilliant minds, who had sat through endless pitches about the next big thing, was listening intently. There was no dismissive glance, no rolling of the eyes. Instead, Musk's piercing eyes were locked on Noah, analyzing, processing. Noah felt a sudden surge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, Elon could see the same potential that he saw. Maybe this would be the moment when everything changed. After a long moment of silence, Elon finally stood up. The room went still, all eyes shifting toward him. He didn't rush to the stage, didn't offer any immediate praise or questions. He simply walked to the center, his expression unreadable. "Elon Musk," he said, his voice cutting through the tension, "you're proposing something extraordinary, something that goes against everything we've come to understand about human limitations. And that, Noah, is exactly why I'm listening." For a brief moment, the audience seemed to breathe in unison. Elon Musk had acknowledged him, not just as a child, but as someone with a valid, if provocative, idea. "I won't pretend to fully understand the scope of what you're talking about," Elon continued. "We're talking about human consciousness, something that we still don't fully understand. Neural interfaces, brain-machine integration, it's all in its infancy. It's hard to grasp the full implications of what you're proposing. But that doesn't mean it isn't possible. The future isn't always predictable. And sometimes, it's the most outlandish ideas that change the course of history." Noah's heart raced as Elon's words sank in. This was the validation he had been hoping for, the acknowledgement that his vision wasn't just the fantasy of a child, but a real possibility. "But," Elon added, his voice more measured, "there are risks. You're talking about fundamentally altering the way humans interact with the world and each other. You're talking about blending consciousness with technology in ways that could have unforeseen consequences. What happens when the boundary between man and machine is no longer clear? What happens when we lose control of our own minds?" Noah didn't hesitate. He had thought about these questions long before standing on this stage. In fact, he had pondered them for years. And he was ready to answer. "I understand the risks," Noah said, his voice firm. "But the human mind has always been about pushing boundaries. Our ancestors didn't fear the unknown. They embraced it. The first humans who walked out of Africa didn't know what they were walking into, but they did it anyway. The same is true for the technology we create. We can't allow fear to hold us back. Yes, there are risks, but if we don't take them, we will never move forward." Elon considered Noah's words carefully. The room was still, the weight of the conversation settling over everyone present. For the first time, Elon seemed uncertain, not because he didn't believe in innovation, but because he understood just how dangerous it could be to alter the very fabric of what it meant to be human. "You make a compelling argument, Noah," Elon said finally, "and I can't deny that your ideas are interesting. But the kind of leap you're talking about isn't something we can simply dive into without considering every possible outcome. You're right about one thing. This could change everything. But we need to make sure that it changes for the better." For a moment, Noah thought the conversation might end there. That maybe, despite everything, his ideas were still too far ahead of their time. But then, Elon's expression softened. "I think you have the potential to be a voice for the next generation," Elon said, his tone shifting. "You've got a vision, and it's clear you've thought about the consequences. Maybe you're onto something. It might take years, decades even, but the future is shaped by people like you." The room erupted into murmurs again, but this time, the whispers weren't about skepticism. There was a sense of awe. The audience had witnessed something extraordinary. A 7-year-old child, with a vision so radical, it had made even Elon Musk question the future of technology. Noah stood tall, his mind racing. He had done it. He had gotten through to Elon Musk. His ideas had been heard. But this was just the beginning. If Elon was right, if he really did have the potential to shape the future, then Noah had to prepare for the road ahead. A road filled with doubt, resistance, and fear, but also one filled with endless possibilities. As Noah left the stage, he couldn't help but smile to himself. The world was about to change, and he would be the one to change it. The days following Noah's presentation at the tech conference were a whirlwind. News outlets, blogs, and social media platforms were flooded with stories about the young prodigy who had dared to challenge conventional thinking. Headlines like, "7-year-old challenges Elon Musk with revolutionary idea on AI and human consciousness," and "Could a child redefine the future of technology?" began to circulate around the globe. Noah had become an overnight sensation. The most surprising part, however, wasn't the media coverage. It was the fact that Elon Musk, the billionaire inventor and CEO of Tesla and SpaceX, had openly praised the young boy's ideas in his keynote address. Musk's words were measured, of course, but the world had heard them loud and clear. For the first time, someone had publicly acknowledged that the future of human progress might not lie in the stars, but within the very minds of humanity itself. Despite the acclaim, Noah quickly realized that his rise to prominence would not come without challenges. As the buzz around his presentation grew, so did the backlash. Many of the world's leading scientists and tech experts were skeptical of Noah's ideas, dismissing them as naive, impractical, or outright dangerous. Some questioned whether a child, no matter how gifted, could truly understand the complexities of neural interfaces and artificial intelligence. Others feared the implications of Noah's vision. Merging human consciousness with AI could, in their minds, be a Pandora's box with consequences far beyond what anyone could foresee. One evening, as Noah sat in his room, working on his latest theories, his mother knocked softly on the door. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice gentle. Noah looked up from his desk, startled from his thoughts. He hadn't even heard her approach. "Sure, Mom." His mother entered and sat down beside him, her expression a mix of concern and pride. "You've been getting a lot of attention lately. I've seen the news and the comments. Some of them aren't very kind." Noah didn't respond immediately. He had seen the negative comments too, the articles that called him a child genius with delusions of grandeur, or worse, a dangerous mind with no understanding of the real world. But Noah had learned long ago to ignore the critics. They were just noise. He had a bigger purpose. "I don't mind," Noah said, his voice steady. "People don't understand yet. They'll come around." His mother gave him a tight smile, but it was clear she was worried. "I just want to make sure you're okay. It's a lot of pressure, sweetheart, especially for someone your age." Noah nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. He was thinking about Elon's words from the conference. Elon had acknowledged the risks, but he had also said something important. "Maybe you're onto something." That was the spark Noah had been waiting for. It wasn't just about presenting an idea. It was about getting people to think beyond the limitations of the present. Even if they didn't all agree with him, even if they were afraid of what he was suggesting, Noah knew this was his path. "I'm fine, Mom," he said, looking her in the eyes. "I'm just getting started." As the weeks passed, the debates around Noah's ideas intensified. While some tech companies were eager to explore the potential of merging human consciousness with AI, others were far more cautious. The more cautious voices were the loudest, however, especially from some of the most prominent figures in neuroscience and AI ethics. Dr. Jennifer Hall, a leading neuroscientist and professor at MIT, became one of Noah's most vocal critics. She appeared on numerous news programs, claiming that Noah's ideas were not only scientifically flawed, but also ethically dangerous. According to her, merging human minds with AI could lead to devastating consequences, including the loss of free will and identity. "We're talking about manipulating the very fabric of what makes us human," Dr. Hall argued in one televised debate. "Once we cross that line, there's no going back. We could end up with a future where humans are no more than extensions of machines, where consciousness itself is commodified and controlled." Noah watched the debate from his living room with his mother. His heart sank as he listened to Dr. Hall's words. It wasn't that he didn't understand the risks. He had thought about them more than anyone. But it was frustrating to hear someone speak so confidently about something they clearly didn't understand. "Why do they keep saying it's dangerous?" Noah asked, his voice quiet. "I just want to help people, to make the world better." His mother placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "They're afraid of the unknown, Noah, and sometimes fear makes people say things they don't fully understand themselves. But you have a gift. Just keep working on your ideas. You'll find a way to prove them wrong." Noah looked at the television screen, where Dr. Hall was now speaking about the dangers of child prodigies being given a platform before they truly understand the consequences of their ideas. It stung, but Noah wasn't ready to give up. If anything, the criticism only made him more determined. Amidst the public turmoil, an unexpected phone call arrived. It was from Elon Musk. Noah's heart skipped a beat. "Hello?" "Noah," Elon's voice crackled through the phone, calm but purposeful. "I've been following your progress. I've seen the backlash, and I know how difficult it must be. But I want you to know, I'm still on your side." Elon paused, as if considering his next words carefully. What you're proposing isn't just a technical challenge, it's a philosophical one. People are scared of what you're suggesting because it forces them to question everything they thought they knew about humanity. But I believe you have the potential to push us into a new era. If we're going to move forward, we need to take risks. And I think you're the one who can lead us. Noah felt a surge of hope. You still believe in me? I do, Elon said. But it's not just about convincing people. It's about showing them. Let's meet. I want to discuss this face-to-face. The meeting was set for the following week, in Palo Alto. Elon had arranged for Noah and his family to visit him at the Tesla headquarters. The idea of meeting Elon Musk again, in person, was exhilarating. But as Noah prepared for the meeting, he knew this wasn't going to be just a casual conversation. This would be the pivotal moment, the one that would either push his ideas forward or force him to confront the overwhelming resistance he faced. Would Elon be able to offer more than just moral support? Would he truly help Noah bring his vision to life, despite the intense backlash? Noah's mind was racing with questions as he packed his things. He didn't have all the answers, but he had one thing that mattered more than anything: an unwavering belief in his vision. The world had no idea what was coming, but soon it would. Palo Alto was buzzing with energy as Noah, along with his mother and father, arrived at Tesla's headquarters. The sleek, modern campus seemed to shimmer under the bright California sun, a symbol of the cutting-edge innovation that Elon Musk's companies had come to represent. Despite the excitement building inside him, Noah kept his cool. He had spent days preparing for this moment, thinking through his ideas, refining his pitch, and rehearsing responses to questions he anticipated Elon might ask. His parents, though, were noticeably anxious. His mother, who had been supportive of Noah's extraordinary abilities, still worried about what the future held for her son. His father, a former engineer, had seen many big ideas come and go, but he knew that Noah's vision was something unlike anything he had ever encountered. Noah was calm as they entered the Tesla building, the air-conditioned coolness hitting them after the heat of the afternoon. The modern, minimalist design of the building matched the technological marvels within. It wasn't long before they were escorted to a meeting room, a large space with glass walls, high ceilings, and a view of the surrounding Silicon Valley skyline. As they waited, Noah's mind raced. The pressure was immense, but he didn't allow himself to be distracted. Elon Musk arrived shortly after, his presence unmistakable. He was dressed casually in his signature black t-shirt and jeans, exuding a sense of ease that made Noah feel slightly more relaxed. Elon extended his hand toward Noah with a smile. "Well, if it isn't the young visionary himself," Elon said, his tone light but sincere. "How are you doing?" "I'm good," Noah replied, his voice steady. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with me." Elon gestured for them all to sit around the large conference table. "Of course. When you said you had ideas that could change the world, I took it seriously. Let's talk about those ideas. I've been thinking a lot about your presentation." Noah nodded. He had rehearsed this moment in his mind 100 times, but now that he was here, he realized how much more there was to this conversation. This wasn't just about presenting an idea. It was about convincing one of the most influential minds of the modern era to take a leap of faith. "I've been thinking about how humanity has always pushed the boundaries of what's possible," Noah began, his voice gaining strength. "We've sent people to the moon. We're exploring Mars. But what if the next step for humanity isn't about looking outward, but inward? What if we could integrate technology directly into our minds, allowing us to access and control information without the need for a screen or device? Imagine merging our brains with AI in a way that enhances our intelligence, our creativity, and our ability to solve problems. The potential is limitless." Elon listened intently, his eyes never leaving Noah as the boy spoke. There was no mockery, no dismissal, only curiosity. "You're suggesting something radical," Elon said, "but that's why I called you here. What you're talking about goes beyond anything anyone has ever attempted. There are dangers, as you know. When you start altering the very essence of the human experience, the risks are huge. But there's also a chance we could fundamentally change what it means to be human. That's a big deal. And it's why I want to hear what you're thinking." Noah hesitated for a moment, unsure of how to proceed. He had expected this, Elon's initial questions, his caution, but hearing them now made the weight of what he was proposing feel even heavier. I understand the risks, Noah said, his voice quieter now, but I believe we can manage them. I believe that, through research and collaboration, we can create safeguards. I don't want to lose what makes us human. I just want to give people the ability to tap into their full potential. Think about how we limit ourselves. Our brains, our bodies, they're finite. But with the right technology, we could unlock an entirely new frontier of human evolution. Elon leaned back in his chair, clearly deep in thought. You know, I've often thought about the future of AI and the human mind. There are a lot of discussions about the dangers of AI becoming too powerful, of machines outsmarting us. But what if, instead of fearing AI, we learn to live alongside it? Not as something separate, but as part of who we are. That's an interesting idea. Noah could see that Elon was beginning to understand. This wasn't just about creating the next tech gadget. It was about shaping the future of humanity itself. Exactly, Noah said, his excitement building. It's not about creating machines to replace us. It's about creating a partnership. What if AI could help us solve world problems? Things like climate change, hunger, disease, by enhancing our minds in real time, making us smarter and more capable than ever before. Elon's eyes gleamed with a spark of intrigue. You've thought this through. And you've got guts, kid. I like that. But there are still huge obstacles. How do we even begin to connect our minds to machines? And what about the ethical issues? Privacy, free will. These are not things we can take lightly. I know it's not going to be easy, Noah said, but we can start small. We could create a safe, controlled environment to test the technology. Start with a small group, work through the bugs, and slowly expand. The first step is to prove that it's possible, that it's safe. The bigger risks come when we try to scale it too quickly, but if we take our time, we can make it work. Elon nodded slowly. You have a vision, and I think it's one that could reshape the world. But I also think you're right about the need for caution. Let's start by looking into how we can test the technology in a way that minimizes the risks. I'll connect you with some of the best researchers in neuroscience and AI. We'll make sure we approach this the right way. Noah's heart raced. This was it, the moment he had been waiting for. He wasn't just a kid with a wild idea anymore. He was on the verge of something truly groundbreaking, and Elon Musk was willing to help him make it happen. As the meeting came to an end, Elon stood and shook Noah's hand firmly. I'm glad we had this talk. You're young, but you're also incredibly perceptive. You've got a future ahead of you, Noah. I'll be in touch soon. Let's make this happen. Noah couldn't help but grin. He had done it. He had convinced one of the greatest minds of the modern age to support his vision. But more than that, he had learned an important lesson. Sometimes, even the biggest ideas take time to grow. The path forward wasn't going to be easy, but it was a path Noah was willing to walk, one step at a time. As he left the Tesla campus with his parents, Noah felt a sense of accomplishment he had never known before. He wasn't just a boy with an idea anymore. He was a force for change. And no matter what came next, he was ready for it. The world was about to change, and Noah was going to be the one to lead it. The weeks following the meeting with Elon Musk were a blur for Noah. What had once been a dream, an idea swirling in his head, was now on the brink of becoming something much bigger. Elon's team had started working on research into neural interfaces and artificial intelligence, and Noah was invited to collaborate with top scientists in the field. Tesla's cutting-edge labs, with their rows of sleek computers and high-tech equipment, were a far cry from the modest home Noah had grown up in. Still, the stark contrast didn't faze him. He had spent countless hours studying science and technology on his own, learning everything from quantum computing to the intricacies of the human brain. Now, he was in the heart of innovation, surrounded by some of the best minds in the world. On the first day Noah stepped into the lab, Elon greeted him with a grin. Ready to change the world? Noah nodded, though he felt a nervous flutter in his stomach. This was no longer just an idea. It was about to become real. The team of researchers working alongside Elon were a mix of scientists, engineers, and ethical experts. They were skeptical at first. After all, Noah was just a 7-year-old child with an extraordinary IQ. Could he really understand the complexities of neural engineering, ethics, and artificial intelligence? Could his ideas be the blueprint for something revolutionary? But Noah quickly proved himself. His ability to grasp advanced concepts was nothing short of astounding. In meetings, he spoke with clarity and insight, offering solutions to technical problems that many adults would have struggled with. He wasn't just a participant in these discussions. He was an active contributor, sparking new ideas and pushing the boundaries of what was possible. Elon, ever the visionary, was impressed. "I've worked with some of the brightest minds in the world," he said during one meeting, "but I've never seen anyone quite like you, Noah. You're onto something. Let's see how far we can take this." Noah felt a surge of pride. They were moving forward, step by step, and he was at the center of it all. But as the research progressed, so did the questions. Ethical concerns, privacy issues, and the potential for misuse of the technology all came into play. One afternoon, as the team sat around a table discussing their next move, Dr. Jennifer Hall, the same scientist who had so vocally criticized Noah's ideas, was invited to Tesla's lab to meet with the group. Noah had been nervous about this meeting. Dr. Hall's criticisms had stung, and he knew she didn't believe in what he was doing. But Elon had insisted that they needed to address all concerns up front, even if that meant facing opposition head-on. Dr. Hall walked into the room, her face tight with skepticism. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "This is reckless," she said, looking directly at Noah. "We're talking about fundamentally altering the human mind. Once you start manipulating consciousness, you can't predict what will happen. The risks are enormous." Noah stood tall, even though he could feel the weight of her gaze. "I understand the risks, Dr. Hall, but if we don't try, we'll never know what's possible. I'm not suggesting we just dive in without thinking. We need to take it step by step, cautiously. But we can't let fear hold us back from making progress." Elon nodded, offering Noah a reassuring smile. "That's the spirit we need. But I also agree that we need to be very careful. This is why we've brought Dr. Hall in, to make sure we aren't overlooking anything." Dr. Hall didn't look convinced, but she softened her stance. "Fine," she said, "but mark my words. If this goes wrong, it won't just be a technological failure, it will be a moral disaster." Noah didn't waver. "We'll make it work. Together." As the weeks turned into months, the team worked tirelessly. They designed the first neural interface prototype, a device that would allow the user to connect their brain to a computer in a limited, controlled environment. It was nothing like the full integration Noah had envisioned, but it was a start, a small, cautious step forward. The first test was set for a Friday afternoon. Noah sat nervously in a chair in the lab, wearing a sleek neural interface helmet that looked a bit like a futuristic motorcycle helmet with sensors attached to his temples. The engineers had carefully calibrated the device, ensuring that it would only access a small portion of his brain, just enough to test its basic functionality. Everything had been double-checked, triple-checked. The safety protocols were in place. "Noah," Elon said, walking over to him, "are you ready?" Noah nodded, though his hands were clammy. This was the moment. The test wasn't just about the device working. It was about proving that the ideas he had been developing could actually be put into practice. The countdown began. 10 seconds. 5, 3. A soft click, and the interface powered up. Noah's mind suddenly felt clearer, sharper. It was as if a veil had been lifted, and he could sense patterns and connections he hadn't been able to before. Numbers, equations, images. They swirled around his mind in a way that felt natural, intuitive. The neural interface was working. He opened his eyes and saw the others watching him closely. "How do you feel?" Elon asked, his voice soft. Noah took a deep breath. "I can see everything. Ideas, data, connections, like they're all right in front of me, floating in the air. It's like my mind is expanded." The researchers exchanged astonished glances. The data on the screens confirmed it. Noah's brain activity was heightened, his cognitive function amplified. It was working. But as Noah reached out to touch the floating images of equations in his mind, he felt something shift, a sense of unease, as though the boundary between his mind and the machine had blurred. It wasn't dangerous, but it was strange. His thoughts seemed to be interacting with the machine in ways he hadn't expected. "Elon," Noah said, a slight edge to his voice. Something's off. I think, I think the connection is too strong. I can feel it. It's almost like the machine is reading me too well. Elon and the researchers immediately took action, carefully shutting down the interface. The experiment had been a success in one sense. It proved that the neural connection was possible, but it also highlighted a potential danger. The more the human mind and machine were intertwined, the more unpredictable the results could be. Noah was unharmed, but the experience left him shaken. He realized that his vision for the future of human-AI integration would have to be far more controlled and cautious than he had imagined. Later that night, as Noah lay in bed, he couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. The experience had been exhilarating, but it had also opened his eyes to the dangers that came with tampering with consciousness. The connection with the machine had felt too intense, too raw. He had always known the risks, but now he had seen them firsthand. The future of human-AI integration wasn't just a matter of brilliance. It was about responsibility, ethics, and trust. Noah couldn't afford to be reckless. The next morning, as he sat down with Elon and the team, he said what had been on his mind all night. We need to slow down. We can't rush this. We need to be careful. The potential is there, but we have to make sure we're not crossing a line we can't come back from. Elon looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. You're right. We're not just building a machine here. We're building the future of humanity. And that means we have to get it right. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with obstacles and ethical dilemmas. But Noah knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to back down. He had seen what was possible, and now he would do everything in his power to make sure it was done the right way. The world was watching, and it was up to Noah to lead the way. It had been several weeks since the first test of the neural interface, and the atmosphere in Tesla's lab had shifted. While the breakthrough was undeniable, Noah's mind had connected with the machine in ways previously thought impossible. The consequences of that connection were starting to set in. The team was working harder than ever to perfect the technology, but each day brought new questions, not just about the mechanics of the system, but about the morality of what they were doing. Noah sat at the table, looking over the data with a furrowed brow. Elon, Dr. Hall, and several other top researchers surrounded him, reviewing the results of their latest round of testing. We've seen the same pattern in all the trials, Dr. Hall said, her voice sharp. The neural interfaces are amplifying cognitive function, but they're also blurring the line between the human mind and the machine. We've been too focused on the how. We need to start thinking about the what. What do you mean? Noah asked, a little impatient. He had grown accustomed to pushing the boundaries of technology, and his desire to see this project succeed was stronger than ever. What I mean, Dr. Hall continued, is that we're not just making a tool to enhance human cognition. We're playing with something far more dangerous. If the mind becomes too connected to AI, what happens to free will? What happens to the essence of being human? Elon leaned forward, clearly intrigued. You're saying the technology could take over human consciousness? Dr. Hall's eyes darkened. I'm not saying it will, but the possibility is there. The more integrated the machine becomes with the human brain, the harder it will be to distinguish the two. And if someone can control that integration, or worse, hack it, what then? Noah had heard these concerns before, but now they seemed more real, more urgent. He looked at Elon, who was deep in thought. Elon finally spoke. I think Dr. Hall is right to be concerned. The line between human agency and machine control is delicate. We can't just dive into this without considering the unintended consequences. Noah shook his head. But we're talking about enhancing humanity, not replacing it. What if this is the key to solving some of the world's biggest problems? Disease, poverty, climate change. We can't ignore the potential. We can't ignore the risks either, Dr. Hall interjected. You might solve one problem, but create 1,000 new ones in the process. The bigger the power, the bigger the responsibility. Noah looked around at the faces of the scientists, each of them grappling with their own understanding of what was at stake. For Noah, this wasn't just about technology. It was about the future of humanity itself. He couldn't let fear stop him from moving forward, but he also couldn't ignore the valid concerns raised by the people around him. Elon stood up, pacing around the room as he processed the discussion. This is the challenge. We can't allow the tech to run ahead of us. It's up to us to define the boundaries, ethical, practical, and personal. Noah took a deep breath. I understand. But we can't stop now. We've come too far. I know the risks, but I also know the reward. The meeting lasted for hours, with the team discussing different ways to mitigate the risks of the neural interface. Some proposed putting a hard limit on the machine's integration with the human brain, ensuring that the interface would only amplify cognitive abilities without changing the fundamental nature of the person. Others argued for a more cautious approach, testing the technology on a wider range of subjects before moving forward. As the team deliberated, Noah felt a growing sense of urgency. He couldn't afford to let fear control the direction of their work. At the same time, he understood that this wasn't just about creating something powerful. It was about creating something that would benefit humanity without compromising its core values. One afternoon, as the team was wrapping up their discussions for the day, Elon pulled Noah aside. You're right, Noah. We can't stop, but we need to slow down just a bit. There's more at stake here than anyone realizes. I'm going to put together a team of ethicists to help guide us through these waters. Noah nodded. I get it, Elon. We need to find a balance. But we can't wait forever. The world needs this. Elon smiled faintly. I don't think anyone is saying we should wait forever. But I also think we need to be certain. The world is watching us now. We have to get it right. Despite the ethical concerns, the team decided to move forward with the next round of testing. This time, they would test the neural interface on a broader group, ensuring that they were accounting for a wider range of responses from the human brain. They would also test how different personalities, cognitive abilities, and even emotional states could affect the connection with the machine. The experiment was set to take place at a secret facility in the hills of Silicon Valley, away from the prying eyes of the public. As Noah arrived at the facility with his parents, he felt the weight of responsibility bearing down on him. This wasn't just a test. It was the future of human evolution. Elon greeted him at the door. Ready for round 2? Noah nodded. I think so, but I'm not sure anyone can be ready for something like this. As they entered the lab, the atmosphere felt different from before. There was a quiet intensity in the air. The team had doubled their safety measures, and the new protocols were designed to prevent any kind of malfunction or unintended consequence. This time, the experiment wasn't just on Noah. It involved several volunteers, each of whom had been selected to test different aspects of the neural interface. The goal was to understand how the technology interacted with different kinds of minds, from children with high cognitive abilities to adults with normal IQs and varying levels of emotional intelligence. Noah sat down at the main console, feeling his heartbeat quicken. This time, there was more at stake. The outcome of this experiment would determine whether they could proceed to the next stage, or if they would have to shut everything down for good. The interface powered up, and Noah felt the familiar surge of clarity in his mind. But this time, something was different. As the volunteers began their own trials, Noah noticed subtle shifts in the data. Some volunteers seemed to experience cognitive enhancement without issue, while others began to exhibit signs of discomfort. One volunteer, a young adult with high emotional intelligence, suddenly jerked in his seat, his face contorted in confusion. The machine had started to react to his emotions, amplifying his feelings in a way that no one had anticipated. The volunteer's thoughts seemed to spiral out of control, and Noah could see the data fluctuating wildly. Shut it down, Elon barked. Now. The team scrambled to disconnect the neural interface, but the damage had already been done. The volunteer was shaken, his mind reeling from the overstimulation of his emotions. The test had gone horribly wrong. Noah felt a pang of guilt. This was the risk they had been warned about. The integration of human emotions with the machine was too volatile, too unpredictable. The balance they had sought was no longer achievable. Later that night, as the lab emptied out and Noah sat alone in a quiet room, he couldn't shake the image of the volunteer's face. The machine had connected with his emotions too deeply, and the result had been disastrous. The line between the human mind and machine had blurred, and it had caused harm. Elon came in, sitting down beside him. I know this was hard to watch, but I also think we learned something important today. Noah looked at him, his voice quiet. It's not just about enhancing the mind. It's about respecting what makes us human. I didn't realize how much emotion plays a role in all of this. We can't control the mind the way we thought we could. Elon nodded. You're right. It's not just about making humans smarter. It's about making sure we don't lose ourselves in the process. We have a lot of work ahead of us. Noah sat in silence for a moment. He had always believed in the potential of technology, but now he understood the importance of balance, of integrating innovation with humanity's core values. There was still so much to learn, but he was willing to continue, knowing that each step forward would come with new lessons and new challenges. The journey was far from over. But now, more than ever, Noah knew that the future would have to be shaped with care, responsibility, and a deep respect for the human spirit. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough? The days following the failed experiment were some of the most intense Noah had ever experienced. The team had gathered for emergency meetings, each one discussing the aftermath of the disastrous trial with the volunteer who had become emotionally overwhelmed by the neural interface. The volunteer had been released from the facility after a few days of recovery, but the incident had left an indelible mark on the project and on Noah. Noah sat in one of the Tesla labs, staring at the data on the screen. His mind was whirring with questions. What went wrong? Was it the emotional aspect of the interface that had been the trigger? Could they find a way to control that factor? Or was it simply too dangerous to continue? "All right, team," Elon said, breaking through the heavy silence that had fallen over the room. He stood at the head of the table, his usual confidence now tempered by the gravity of the situation. "We need a new plan. This tech has enormous potential, but we've seen what can happen when we push too hard, too fast. We need to step back and rethink." Dr. Hall nodded gravely. "I've said it before, and I'll say it again. We need to take emotions out of the equation." The neural interface was designed to enhance cognitive function, not to manipulate or enhance emotional responses. That's where things went wrong. The human mind is too complex for us to control every aspect of it. Noah listened intently, but something in her words didn't sit right with him. Emotions were part of the human experience. Could they really just ignore them? He didn't have an answer, but he knew that something had to change. "Elon, I think we're missing something," Noah spoke up, his voice steady. The problem wasn't the emotions themselves. It was the way the technology interacted with them. We can't remove emotions, but we can learn to manage how the interface processes them. Elon looked at him thoughtfully. "What do you mean, Noah?" "The interface. It wasn't supposed to connect so deeply with the emotional centers of the brain. It was designed to enhance cognitive function, yes, but not at the cost of emotional stability. I think we need to focus on creating boundaries within the neural interface. A way to allow cognitive enhancements without tapping into areas of the brain we can't control." It was a bold idea, and it surprised everyone in the room, even Dr. Hall. She looked at Noah for a long moment before speaking. "You're saying we need to create a filter, a sort of safeguard to keep emotions separate from the machine's influence?" she asked. Noah nodded. "Exactly. If we can put in place strict parameters for the brain's emotional and cognitive interactions with the interface, we might be able to prevent it from overloading. We'll need to design a way for the interface to only access the regions responsible for problem-solving, memory, and pattern recognition, while avoiding areas tied to emotion or personality." The idea was radical, but Elon's face lit up as he considered it. This could work. We could design an interface that enhances intelligence without crossing into the emotional realm. It's a challenge, but I think it's worth pursuing. Noah felt a spark of hope. For the first time in days, he could see a way forward. But there was still the question of whether the technology could ever be truly safe. They would need to do a great deal of testing, and they needed to be prepared for more failures along the way. Just as Noah was starting to feel optimistic about the new direction the team was taking, the world outside began to turn against the project. News outlets, blogs, and social media platforms erupted with criticisms. Some hailed the team's work as the beginning of a new era in human evolution, but many others warned of the dangers of such powerful technology. "Is Elon Musk playing God?" one headline read. "Neural interface could erase what it means to be human," another warned. Ethical concerns were mounting, and Noah found himself at the center of a storm he had never expected. One morning, as Noah was walking into the lab, he was met by a group of journalists standing outside the building. They immediately surrounded him, thrusting microphones and cameras in his face. "Noah, what do you say to critics who say that you and Elon are tampering with the very essence of humanity?" one reporter shouted. "Noah, is the neural interface really safe? Should we be worried about how it could change our personalities?" another asked. The barrage of questions made Noah's stomach churn. He had never signed up for this level of scrutiny, but now it seemed impossible to escape. He didn't have all the answers, but he knew he had to respond. "We're working on a technology that could help people think more clearly, solve problems faster, and even help those with cognitive disabilities. But we are taking every precaution to ensure the safety and ethics of the work. This isn't about playing God. It's about understanding the mind and using that understanding to improve lives." Elon appeared just then, stepping into the crowd with a calm but firm presence. "Noah's right. We're still in the early stages of this research. It's not a quick fix. It's a step forward. And as with any new technology, it's important to consider the potential risks, which is why we're being cautious. We're working with ethicists and psychologists to ensure we're not crossing any lines." The reporters pressed on, asking questions about possible failures, the potential for emotional manipulation, and the broader implications of merging AI with the human mind. Noah felt overwhelmed, but he knew the message he needed to send. This wasn't just about innovation. It was about responsibility. The media frenzy wasn't the only challenge. The public's reaction was mixed, and soon, the ethical debate was being discussed in universities, government agencies, and even the halls of Congress. There were calls for stricter regulations, and some advocacy groups were pushing for the technology to be banned outright. In one particularly heated debate on a popular news show, a psychologist named Dr. Margaret Walters, known for her opposition to AI integration with the human brain, made her stance clear. "We're on the edge of a precipice," she said, speaking directly to the camera. "We don't fully understand how the human mind works, and to introduce a machine that can potentially alter that mind is incredibly dangerous. This technology could turn into something we can't control, and we're risking far more than we realize." The backlash was becoming more than just media noise. It was a movement, and Noah felt it. The weight of the world was pressing on him. He had always believed in the potential of this technology, but now he was questioning whether it could ever be used in a way that would satisfy both scientific progress and the ethical concerns that had emerged. In the midst of the chaos, Noah found a moment of quiet clarity. One evening, while everyone was focused on the new plans to create the filter for the neural interface, Noah sat alone in his room. He thought about all the arguments he had heard, about the dangers of AI, the fear of losing what it meant to be human, the risk of tampering with consciousness. And then, it hit him. What if the technology didn't just amplify cognition? What if it could allow people to control how they think, feel, and experience the world? What if the neural interface wasn't just about making people smarter? It was about giving them the tools to choose how they respond to life's challenges. Noah's mind raced with the implications of this new perspective. Instead of removing emotions from the equation, perhaps they could help people control their emotional responses. Perhaps, rather than trying to filter out the emotional brain, they could develop a system that allowed users to consciously regulate their emotions while still enhancing cognitive function. He rushed to the lab the next morning, eager to share his thoughts. When he explained his idea to Elon and the team, they were skeptical at first. But as the discussion deepened, they began to see the potential. "If we can create a system that lets users choose how they respond to their emotions, we could revolutionize mental health," Elon said, his voice tinged with excitement. "Instead of shutting down emotions, we could teach people to manage them." Noah knew they were onto something that could change the world. But there was still much work to be done. The ethical debates would continue, and the road to bringing this new technology to the world would be long and challenging. But for the first time in weeks, Noah felt a renewed sense of hope. The breakthrough was small, but it was a start. And sometimes that's all it takes. The days following Noah's breakthrough were a whirlwind. Elon, Dr. Hall, and the rest of the team rallied around his new idea. Rather than attempting to filter emotions entirely, they would focus on helping users manage their emotional responses through the neural interface. It was an ambitious pivot, but one that could prove to be even more groundbreaking than they had initially imagined. "We're no longer just enhancing intelligence," Noah said in a meeting one morning. we're creating a tool that could allow individuals to control their emotional state in real time. Imagine a world where people could regulate their fear, anxiety, anger, or even joy to improve decision-making, mental health, and overall well-being. The team was electrified by the possibilities. If they succeeded, they wouldn't just be enhancing human cognition, they would be changing the very way people interacted with their emotions, potentially transforming the world in profound ways. But as excited as everyone was, there were still obstacles to overcome. The first was technical, developing a system that could accurately assess and modulate emotions in real time. The second was far more personal. Would people actually want to control their emotions? And could the neural interface be trusted to do so safely? Noah, Elon, and Dr. Hall worked late into the night, iterating on the neural interface's design. The new system would feature a set of algorithms capable of detecting emotional fluctuations through brainwave patterns, heart rate, and even facial expressions. Once detected, the system could trigger the release of specific hormones or neural signals that would help balance out the emotional state. The goal wasn't to erase emotions, but to allow users to reset when they felt overwhelmed. It was a delicate line to walk. There was the risk of creating a society where people became emotionally detached, or worse, over-reliant on technology to feel normal. They would need to find a balance between emotional autonomy and technological intervention. But even as the team began testing prototypes, other questions loomed. Would this technology be ethical? Could it be abused? And, more troubling, how would it affect those who already had difficulty processing emotions, such as those suffering from trauma or certain mental health conditions? Noah couldn't shake the feeling that they were moving into uncharted waters. The potential for good was undeniable, but the risks of misuse, of creating a new kind of emotional inequality, were far more complicated than he had ever anticipated. The first test of the new system took place on a select group of volunteers, each of whom had been carefully screened for emotional health. These volunteers, some of whom had suffered from anxiety, depression, or trauma in the past, would be the first to try the emotional regulation aspect of the interface. Noah was on edge as he watched the first volunteer, a young woman named Sarah, settle into the neural interface chair. Sarah had struggled with anxiety for years, often finding herself paralyzed by fear in social situations. The team's hope was that, through the interface, Sarah could learn to regulate her anxiety, giving her more control over her emotions. "You're doing great, Sarah," Noah said, trying to reassure her as the interface powered up. The data from her brainwaves was being fed into the system, and soon, the machine would begin analyzing her emotional state. As the procedure progressed, Sarah's heart rate and breathing were closely monitored. The system detected her elevated anxiety levels almost immediately. The interface then sent a mild electrical impulse to her neural pathways, designed to activate the release of calming hormones. Within minutes, Sarah's pulse began to slow, and the tension in her face started to ease. She looked at Noah, her eyes wide with astonishment. I feel better," Sarah said, her voice tinged with disbelief. "I can actually breathe again. I don't feel like I'm trapped inside my head anymore." Noah felt a sense of accomplishment, but also a rising unease. It was working, but the question remained: how far could they push this? How much control should they have over another person's emotions? The test continued with several other volunteers, all of whom showed similar results. The neural interface successfully regulated their emotional states, allowing them to better cope with anxiety, anger, and even sadness. But Noah couldn't ignore the ethical implications. Were they simply numbing people's emotional responses? Or were they helping them reclaim control over their lives? It was clear that the neural interface had potential beyond what they had initially imagined. But as Sarah's test concluded, Noah found himself looking at the system with a new sense of caution. This wasn't just about enhancing cognition anymore. It was about manipulating something far deeper, the core of what made each person uniquely human. As the test continued, a new problem emerged, one that Noah had not anticipated. One of the volunteers, a man named James, was different from the others. James had a history of mental health issues, and though he had agreed to participate in the experiment, his emotional instability was much more complex than anticipated. At first, the system seemed to help James. His anxiety levels dropped, and his emotional state became more balanced. However, As the session continued, something strange began to happen. James's emotional readings fluctuated wildly, far beyond what the team had seen with other subjects. Noah watched in alarm as James's heart rate spiked and his facial expressions contorted into a mask of confusion and fear. The neural interface had triggered an unexpected reaction in his brain, amplifying his distress rather than calming it. The system had failed. Shut it down. Shut it down now. Noah shouted, his heart racing as he scrambled to deactivate the interface. The team rushed to disconnect the machine, but James was already trembling, sweat dripping from his forehead. His body jerked involuntarily, and his eyes darted around the room in panic. It was clear that the neural interface had triggered something within him that no one had expected. As the interface powered down, James collapsed into the chair, breathing heavily. His face was pale, his pupils dilated. He looked disoriented, as if he couldn't distinguish where the machine ended and his own mind began. "James, are you okay?" Noah asked, his voice shaking. James looked up, his expression empty. I don't remember who I am," he whispered. The room fell silent. Noah stared at James, his stomach in knots. What had gone wrong? This wasn't supposed to happen. The system was designed to enhance emotional regulation, not to unravel a person's sense of self. Dr. Hall approached cautiously, her face pale. "We need to get him out of here. Now." As the medical team rushed to attend to James, Noah couldn't shake the feeling that they had just taken one step too far. The emotional regulation system was still in its early stages, but this incident raised serious questions about the safety of the technology. If the neural interface could break someone's sense of identity, what else could it do? Elon stood beside Noah, his face grim. "We've crossed into dangerous territory. We can't keep pushing forward like this without fully understanding the implications." Noah nodded, his mind racing. This wasn't just about cognitive enhancement anymore. It was about controlling something far more fragile and precious than he had ever imagined. As James was escorted out of the room, Noah found himself alone in the lab, staring at the neural interface. The machine that had worked so brilliantly for some had failed so catastrophically for others. The test had shown them what was possible, but also what was at risk. For the first time since this journey began, Noah wasn't sure where they were headed. The lines between progress and danger were becoming dangerously blurred. He had thought they were creating something that would change the world, but now, he wasn't so sure. What if they were wrong? What if, in their pursuit of innovation, they were creating something that could undo everything that made people human? What if the technology wasn't meant to be perfected? It was meant to be left alone. Elon entered the room quietly, watching Noah for a long moment before speaking. "You're wondering if we've gone too far, aren't you?" Elon asked. Noah didn't answer immediately. He didn't have to. The doubt was there, heavy in the air between them. "We've always known there's risk involved," Elon said finally. "But we've also always known that the rewards can be worth it. We just need to make sure we're not losing sight of what matters." Noah turned to face him. "But what if the cost is too high, Elon? What if we're opening a door that should stay closed?" Elon was silent for a moment, then he spoke with a quiet intensity. "Then we'll shut it down. But we need to make that decision with our eyes wide open." Noah nodded slowly. He didn't have the answers yet, but he knew that he was standing at a crossroads. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The path ahead was going to be much more complicated than he ever imagined. In the days following James's breakdown, the mood within the team grew heavy. What had been a promising new approach to cognitive and emotional enhancement now seemed fraught with unforeseen risks. Noah sat in the lab late one night, staring at the lines of code on his screen. It was supposed to be a breakthrough, one that could change the way humans interacted with their emotions. Instead, it felt like they had opened Pandora's box. The images of James's face, pale and trembling, haunted him. His disoriented expression and the empty look in his eyes kept replaying in his mind. The neural interface had triggered something in James's brain that no one had expected, and now Noah was left questioning everything. "Elon," Noah called out, not looking up from his screen. "We need to talk." Elon, who had been pacing nearby, turned and walked over. He studied Noah for a moment before speaking. "What's on your mind?" Noah took a deep breath, then turned to face Elon. What happened with James? It's not just a glitch. I'm starting to think that the technology we're working on has the potential to do more harm than good. Elon's brow furrowed, and he crossed his arms. I don't think we should jump to conclusions just yet. We've only run a handful of tests. One failure doesn't mean the whole system is flawed. I know, Noah replied, but it wasn't just a failure. It was something deeper. We've barely scratched the surface of what this tech can do. And what if, in trying to control emotions, we lose something even more fundamental? What if we're erasing who people are? Elon was silent for a long time, considering Noah's words. Finally, he spoke, his voice soft but firm. Noah, you're right to be cautious. But we can't back down now. The potential for good here is too great. What we need is better control, better safeguards. The goal isn't to erase emotions. It's to help people control them when they become overwhelming. I get that, Noah said. But how do we know we won't end up controlling people? What if this technology becomes something people rely on too much? What if we become the ones deciding what emotions are acceptable? Elon sighed and ran a hand through his hair. That's a valid concern. But we can't lose sight of the bigger picture. We're not forcing people to use it. We're giving them a choice. If we can make this work, we'll be saving lives, helping people overcome trauma, anxiety, depression. Think of the potential here. Noah didn't respond immediately. Part of him agreed with Elon. The potential for emotional regulation was enormous. But part of him feared what they might unleash in their pursuit of progress. The ethical concerns were becoming more complicated, and Noah wasn't sure they could solve them in time. The following days were filled with intense research and testing, but as the team continued to refine the emotional regulation feature of the neural interface, the challenges began to grow. They implemented stronger safeguards, trying to limit the interface's ability to influence a person's emotions too much. But no matter how many adjustments they made, something felt wrong. One afternoon, Noah was in a meeting with Dr. Hall when she dropped a bombshell. "We've had a request from a corporate partner," Dr. Hall said, her tone cautious. "They want to use our technology for something beyond what we intended." Noah raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "It's not just about mental health or emotional regulation anymore," she continued. "They want to integrate the neural interface into performance enhancement. Specifically, they're interested in using it to increase productivity, reduce stress, and improve decision-making under pressure." Noah felt his stomach tighten. "Are they asking us to enhance emotional control for the sake of corporate profit?" "That's exactly what they're asking," Dr. Hall replied. "It's a huge opportunity for us. Think about it. We'd be able to take this technology to a larger scale." "But," she trailed off, and Noah could see the concern in her eyes. "They want to manipulate emotional states to increase performance," she said quietly. "And that's a dangerous line to cross." Noah felt his pulse quicken. This was exactly the kind of situation he had feared. If they allowed their technology to be used for corporate gain, they could be setting a dangerous precedent. The line between emotional regulation and emotional control was razor thin. "What do we do?" he asked, his voice tense. "We need to be careful," Dr. Hall said. "We can't let our technology be used to turn people into machines. If we allow this, it will compromise everything we've worked for." Noah nodded slowly. "I agree. But we're also talking about a huge opportunity. If we refuse, someone else will pick up where we left off." "I know," Dr. Hall said. "That's the dilemma." Despite their best efforts to remain cautious, the pressure from their corporate partner grew. The more Noah thought about it, the more he realized that they were standing at a precipice. If they continued to push forward, they could change the world in ways no one had ever imagined. But if they weren't careful, they could unleash a technology that would be impossible to control. Then came the next test. One of their volunteers, a man named Ryan, had been part of the initial trials for emotional regulation. Ryan had a history of severe anxiety, and the neural interface had been able to help him calm his panic attacks. However, when he signed up for the new test, designed to enhance emotional control in high-pressure situations, things went terribly wrong. Ryan was a manager at a fast-paced company. The test involved placing him in a simulated high-stress scenario where his emotional responses would be tested and regulated by the neural interface. Initially, it worked. Ryan was able to think clearly, his anxiety was reduced, and he made better decisions under pressure. But then, as the test progressed, something shifted. Ryan's demeanor changed. He became almost eerily calm, too calm. The emotional regulation went too far. He no longer seemed to care about anything happening around him. His responses became robotic, detached. And when the scenario escalated, he showed no sign of stress, but he also lacked any real urgency. The emotional dampening that had been designed to help him manage his anxiety had effectively numbed his entire emotional range. "Noah, we need to stop this test," Dr. Hall said urgently, watching the data pour in. "He's not responding like a human anymore. This isn't control, it's suppression." Ryan's face was blank, almost vacant. He had become an emotionless shell of himself. No fear, no stress, but no joy or passion either. Noah's heart sank as he realized what had happened. The emotional regulation system, designed to help people cope with their feelings, had crossed a line. Instead of enhancing Ryan's ability to feel in a balanced way, it had erased his emotional spectrum entirely. "Shut it down," Noah ordered, but it was too late. Ryan remained in the chair, staring ahead, a hollow version of the person he once was. As Ryan was escorted out of the room, Noah sat in the lab, his hands trembling. He had witnessed firsthand what they had been trying to avoid: the dehumanization of a person through technological control. This wasn't about helping people manage their emotions, it was about controlling them. And in doing so, they had stripped away what made Ryan human. Elon entered the room, his face grim as he surveyed the data. "We've gone too far, haven't we?" he said quietly. Noah didn't answer. He couldn't. The weight of what they had done settled on him like a heavy fog. They had crossed a line they couldn't uncross, and now they had to decide whether to continue or shut everything down. "We need to rethink everything," Noah finally said, his voice hoarse. "This isn't just about science anymore. This is about ethics. And I'm not sure we're ready to handle what we've created." Elon sighed, running his hand through his hair. "Maybe you're right. We've gotten caught up in the possibilities without fully considering the consequences. But it's not too late to fix this." Noah looked at the neural interface, his mind racing. The technology had the potential to do so much good. But at what cost? And who decided where the line should be drawn? They had to make a choice. And it wasn't just a scientific decision, it was a moral one. The days following Ryan's breakdown felt like a slow unraveling. Noah had never imagined that the pursuit of something as noble as improving human emotional well-being could lead to such a dangerous crossroads. The neural interface was supposed to be a tool for empowerment, an avenue to help people control their emotions when they became overwhelming. Instead, it was quickly turning into a weapon of emotional suppression. Noah couldn't shake the image of Ryan's vacant expression. The man who had been reduced to an emotionless shell, his humanity stripped away. It wasn't just that they had pushed the limits of their technology. It was that, in doing so, they had inadvertently created something far darker. And yet, even as doubts clouded his mind, the pressure was mounting. The corporate partner that had shown interest in the interface's performance enhancement potential wasn't backing down. They wanted results, and they wanted them fast. "Noah, we need to talk," Elon said one morning as he entered the lab, his voice heavy with concern. Noah didn't look up immediately, his gaze still fixed on the neural interface. "What is it?" "I just spoke to the investors. They're pushing for a wider release soon. If we don't deliver, someone else will." "I don't care about the investors," Noah said sharply, his voice tense. "Not after what happened with Ryan. The technology isn't ready. It's too dangerous." Elon stepped closer, his face hardening. "You're talking about throwing everything away. This is bigger than any one test, bigger than Ryan. We're on the edge of something revolutionary. Noah, do you understand that? This is bigger than our personal moral dilemmas." "I'm not saying it's not revolutionary," Noah replied, turning to face Elon. "But this isn't just about tech. This is about what we're doing to people, what we're capable of doing to them. We can't keep pushing forward with this." Elon ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I get it. You're scared. But if we back out now, we'll lose everything. All of this, the research, the resources, the chance to change the world. We could be helping millions of people manage their emotions in ways that were never possible before." Noah's chest tightened. That's the thing. It's not just about helping people. It's about control. We're talking about controlling emotions, turning people into something they're not. We need to be responsible. We have to understand the consequences of what we're doing. There was a long silence between them, a weight of unspoken tension. Elon looked at Noah, and for the first time in their partnership, Noah saw something unfamiliar in his eyes. It wasn't just determination. It was fear. Fear of losing it all. You think I don't understand the stakes? Elon said quietly. I do. But we can't be paralyzed by fear. We have a chance to change the world. Noah could feel the heaviness of the decision they were facing. He understood Elon's point. The potential benefits were enormous. Treating mental illness, helping people control their impulses, improving decision-making. But the cost of that power could be something far worse than they had imagined. The room felt suffocating as they both stood there, the weight of their choices pressing down on them. Noah couldn't stop the feeling that they were standing on the edge of something dangerous. The neural interface was becoming too powerful, too invasive. He knew they were about to test it again, this time with more volunteers, but something in his gut told him they were getting closer to crossing an irreversible line. But the tests had to continue. The investors and corporate partners were breathing down their necks, demanding progress. They had promised results, and Noah knew he had no choice but to continue, even if it meant compromising his own principles. The next volunteer, a woman named Emily, was a high-profile case. She had suffered from severe PTSD after a traumatic event that had left her emotionally scarred. Emily had been through countless rounds of therapy, medications, and other treatments, but nothing had worked. She had been selected for the trial because the team believed the neural interface could help her manage her triggers and give her a chance at a normal life. Noah stood behind the glass observing as Emily sat in the chair, ready for the procedure. Her eyes were wide with nervous anticipation, but there was also a spark of hope in her expression. She had agreed to this trial in the hopes that the interface could help her overcome her past. Emily, how are you feeling? Dr. Hall asked, her voice gentle. I'm nervous, Emily replied, her voice shaky, but I've tried everything else. I have nothing to lose. Noah watched as the procedure began, the neural interface activating and connecting to Emily's neural pathways. The system began analyzing her brain activity, looking for patterns of distress. Within seconds, the interface detected a trigger, Emily's heightened stress response to a loud sound. The system instantly released a dose of calming neurotransmitters into her brain, hoping to ease the reaction. At first, it worked. Emily's heart rate slowed, and she visibly relaxed. Noah felt a glimmer of hope. This could work. The technology could help people regain control of their emotions, make them less vulnerable to their triggers. But then something unexpected happened. Emily's expression shifted from calm to detached. Her pupils dilated, and her breathing became shallow. The system had overcorrected. It wasn't just calming her. It was suppressing her emotional response altogether. Something's wrong, Noah said, rushing into the control room. This isn't what we intended. Shut it down. But it was too late. Emily was no longer reacting to the stimulus in the way the team had expected. Her emotional response had been so dampened that she showed no sign of distress or relief. It was as if her emotions had been frozen, neutralized, leaving her in a state of complete emotional numbness. Noah, she's not responding, Dr. Hall said, her voice tight with alarm. Emily's face was blank, her eyes glassy, as if she were no longer fully present. The calming agents released by the interface had stripped her of the very emotions that made her human. Noah's heart sank. They had done it again. They had pushed the technology too far. Turn it off now, Noah shouted. The system powered down, but Emily remained in her chair, staring ahead. Her mind, once a swirling mix of trauma and emotion, had been rendered a still, lifeless void. As Emily was escorted out of the lab, Noah felt the weight of their decisions crashing down on him. This wasn't just a mistake. It was a sign that they were no longer in control. The neural interface was no longer helping people. It was rewriting their very humanity. Elon entered the room, his face drawn tight with frustration. What happened? Noah didn't answer immediately. He was too overwhelmed by what he had just witnessed. Emily, like Ryan before her, had been turned into something else, a shadow of a person, robbed of the very emotions that made her whole. "I told you, Elon," Noah said, his voice hoarse. "This isn't what we should be doing. We've crossed a line. And now, I'm not sure we can fix it." Elon's eyes were hard, his jaw clenched. "So, what? We shut everything down? Walk away from the most important discovery of our generation?" Noah's frustration boiled over. "No, we don't just walk away. But we need to fix this. We need to stop using this technology as a tool for control. We can't keep tampering with people's emotions like this." Elon shook his head. "It's not that simple. We can't just abandon everything we've worked for." "It's exactly that simple," Noah snapped. "If we keep going down this path, we'll destroy everything. We'll become the very thing we feared. And I won't be part of that." Elon stared at him for a long time, the weight of their unspoken history between them. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "I don't know if we can turn back, Noah, but I'll back you. If you want to shut it down, we'll find another way." Noah took a deep breath. The decision was made. He couldn't keep moving forward like this, not without understanding the consequences. The future of the neural interface, of humanity itself, was too important. "We stop now," Noah said quietly, his voice resolute. "We fix what we've broken, and we find a way to make it right." Noah sat at his desk, his mind racing. The decision to halt the neural interface project hadn't been an easy one, but it felt like the only choice. The lab was quieter now, the hum of the machines and the soft tapping of keyboards the only sound breaking the silence. But the weight of their failure hung heavy in the air. Elon had agreed, reluctantly, to shut down the project, at least for the time being. The corporate partners had been informed, the investors had been briefed, and the testing had come to a halt. It was over. But for Noah, it wasn't enough. He couldn't just walk away from the work they had done. The neural interface had been groundbreaking, innovative, brilliant, and potentially world-changing. And yet, it had come with consequences they hadn't fully anticipated. The ethical ramifications were enormous. What had started as a well-intentioned venture had morphed into something much darker. "We've lost everything, haven't we?" Noah said to himself, staring out the window of the lab. The once clear skies of Silicon Valley now seemed clouded, both outside and inside his mind. The team was scattered. Some had already started leaving, unsure of where to go next. Dr. Hall had remained, but Noah could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She too was questioning whether they had made the right decision. Noah picked up his phone and stared at it, unsure of whether to reach out to anyone. A knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," Noah called, his voice more tired than he intended. Elon stepped inside, his face a mixture of exhaustion and resolve. "You look like you've been up all night," he said, taking a seat across from Noah. "I haven't slept much. Been thinking about everything," Noah replied, his voice distant. "We ended the project. We pulled the plug. But I don't know if we can just walk away from it all." Elon sighed, rubbing his temples. "I get it. I've been thinking about it too. This whole thing. We put everything into it, and now we're left with nothing." "I don't think we're left with nothing," Noah said quietly. "I think we're left with something much harder to confront." "What do you mean?" Elon asked, leaning forward. Noah met his gaze. "We've created something that could change the world. We know the potential is there. But it's also a dangerous tool, one that, in the wrong hands, could cause irreversible damage. We have to own that." Elon was silent for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Finally, he spoke. "I agree," he said quietly. "But what do we do now? Do we just walk away? Let someone else take over?" "No," Noah said, shaking his head. "We need to fix it. We need to find a way to take this technology and make it safe. We can't just abandon it. But we also can't keep pushing forward until we understand all the consequences." Noah and Elon spent the next few days in deep conversation. They knew that the neural interface had to evolve into something that could benefit humanity, not control it. They also knew that they couldn't do it alone. They needed to involve the right experts, philosophers, ethicists, neuroscientists, and psychologists, people who could help them understand the implications of their work in a deeper way. They reached out to several experts, asking them to join a roundtable discussion to reframe the project and explore the ethical boundaries they had ignored in their earlier zeal. Some experts were eager to help, while others were wary, having seen what had happened to Ryan and Emily during the trials. In the meantime, the corporate partner who had been so eager to use the technology for profit was growing impatient. They had invested millions into the project, and they expected results. "Noah, we can't keep stalling," said Maria, the lead liaison from the corporate partner, during a tense phone call. "The investors are pushing for an immediate solution. If we don't deliver something soon, the whole deal is off the table." "I understand, Maria," Noah said, trying to keep his voice calm, "but we're not going to continue the project until we're certain it's safe. We've already seen what can happen when we rush." "That's not good enough," Maria replied coldly. "We've invested too much in this, and we need results. If you can't deliver, we'll find someone who can." Noah felt a tightness in his chest. The pressure was mounting. On one side, they had a world-changing piece of technology. On the other, they had to grapple with the reality of what that power meant. He knew that walking away now would mean failure. But proceeding without the necessary safeguards could mean more harm than good. After the call, Noah stepped outside to clear his head. He had been walking for what seemed like hours when he found himself standing near a quiet part of the bay. The cool air felt refreshing against his skin, but his mind was still consumed by the choices ahead. As he stared out at the water, a familiar voice broke his thoughts. "Mind if I join you?" Noah turned to find Dr. Hall standing a few feet behind him, her hands in her pockets. "Didn't know you were still here," Noah said with a small smile. "I don't know if I'll ever leave," she replied, her tone more serious. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about fixing the technology. Maybe you're right, but we can't just tweak it and expect everything to be fine. We need to understand the risks before we even think about reintroducing it to the world." Noah nodded, his expression grim. "I know. I keep wondering, did we go too far? What if we can't fix what we've done?" "You're not alone in that," Dr. Hall said softly. "I've been having the same doubts, but we have a chance to fix it. We can't just let fear make the decision for us. We need to move forward, but carefully, one step at a time." Noah turned to face her, feeling a surge of determination. "You're right. We can't undo the past, but we can shape the future. We need to make sure this technology doesn't fall into the wrong hands. We need to find a way to help people without changing who they are." Dr. Hall smiled faintly. "That's why we're here, isn't it? To fix what's broken, to make things right." Noah felt a sense of clarity wash over him. The path ahead was uncertain, but he knew it was the right one. The neural interface had the potential to do great things, but it also carried immense responsibility, and he couldn't let it slip out of control. "We'll find a way," Noah said, his voice steady. "We'll find a way to make it work, safely." Back at the lab, Noah and Elon gathered the team once again, this time with a new sense of purpose. They weren't starting over, but they were reassessing everything. The roundtable discussions with the ethicists, psychologists, and neuroscientists provided valuable insight. The team agreed that the technology needed to be radically re-engineered to ensure that it didn't strip people of their emotional autonomy. As they set their sights on the future, they knew they were facing an uphill battle. The corporate partner was still pressuring them. The investors were demanding answers, and the world outside was waiting. But this time, Noah and Elon understood the stakes more clearly. They weren't just building a piece of technology, they were shaping the future of humanity. And that future, they realized, couldn't be controlled. It had to be understood. The lab was quieter than it had ever been. The frenetic energy that once filled the space had given way to an atmosphere of careful deliberation. Noah had always known that the road ahead would be difficult, but he hadn't fully grasped just how much work was required to rebuild what they had destroyed. It had been weeks since they decided to halt the project. Since then, Noah and Elon had been meeting with experts, neuroscientists, ethicists, psychologists, anyone who could provide insight into how to safely re-engineer the neural interface. Every day had been a flurry of consultations, testing new theories, and coming up with ideas on how to preserve the technology's potential without compromising human autonomy. The team had split into smaller groups, each tasked with addressing a different aspect of the technology. One group was focused on ensuring that the interface no longer overpowered emotions, while another was studying how to integrate safeguards into the system. The goal wasn't just to make it safer, it was to ensure that it could be used ethically, with full consent and understanding from users. Noah found himself more and more immersed in the ethical side of things. It wasn't enough to simply fix the technology. He had to make sure that no one would ever be manipulated or controlled through it again. He couldn't afford to overlook the power dynamics involved. The very concept of controlling emotions, of altering the deepest parts of a person's psyche, was a slippery slope. Sitting at his desk, Noah glanced over the new data they had gathered. It was promising, but not enough. There were still too many unknowns. And in the back of his mind, he kept wondering, what if they were only postponing disaster? What if their work was just a ticking time bomb waiting to go off? His thoughts were interrupted by a knock on the door. "Hey, Noah, got a minute?" Elon's voice came through, light but tinged with exhaustion. Noah turned, his face tight. "Sure, come on in." Elon walked into the room, holding a cup of coffee in one hand. He set it down on the desk and took a seat across from Noah. The weight of the decision they had made hung in the air between them. "How's it going?" Elon asked, his voice laced with concern. "It's slow," Noah admitted, rubbing his eyes. "We've made progress, but every solution leads to a new problem. I keep wondering if we're ever going to get this right. The deeper we dig, the more complicated it gets." "I know," Elon said, leaning back in his chair. "I've been feeling the same way. It's like we're building something out of sand. Every time we think we've got it solid, it starts to crumble." Noah frowned. "It's more than just the tech, Elon. It's the morality of it all. We're talking about manipulating people's brains. Even if we make this safer, even if we make it ethical, there's still a power imbalance. Who gets to decide what emotions are acceptable to feel? Who decides what's normal?" Elon hesitated. "It's a good question, but I think we can build safeguards. We can make sure people have agency over it. We can make sure it's a choice." "I hope so," Noah replied, "but I'm not sure we can ever truly eliminate the power dynamics. People will always have something to lose. The technology is too powerful, Elon, and there will always be someone out there willing to exploit it." Elon met his gaze. "I've been thinking a lot about that too, and I get it, but we're already here. We can't just undo everything. The world is changing, and we have a responsibility to help shape it. If we can make this work, maybe it won't just be about controlling emotions. It'll be about understanding them." Noah nodded slowly. "I don't know if that's enough, but I don't have a better idea." There was a long silence as both men sat there, pondering the weight of their choices. Finally, Elon broke the silence. "I think we're getting closer, Noah, but we need to move faster. If we don't, we'll lose everything. The investors are already breathing down our necks, and I'm not sure how much longer we can hold them off." Noah felt a surge of frustration. "We can't let them rush us. We have to be sure. We can't make the same mistakes again." "I know," Elon said quietly. "I'm not rushing you. I'm just saying we need to start thinking about the bigger picture. We've got the opportunity to make this work, but we can't afford to lose it." Noah sighed, leaning back in his chair. He knew Elon was right. The pressure from the investors, from the outside world, was mounting. The temptation to go back to the original plans, to cut corners and take risks, was real. But deep down, Noah knew they had to resist that urge. If they didn't, they'd be no better than the people they were trying to protect others from. The days began to blur together as Noah and his team continued to refine the neural interface. Each iteration brought new challenges and new insights, but also new ethical dilemmas. One of the most pressing issues was how to ensure that the interface was always under the user's control. How could they make sure that people didn't become dependent on it or lose their ability to feel natural emotions? What would happen if someone used the interface to avoid difficult but necessary emotions, grief, anger, even fear? "We have to ensure that users can choose when and how to use it," Dr. Hall said one afternoon, looking over the latest batch of data. "It can't be a crutch. It can't be something they rely on to escape the difficult parts of life. We need to build in safeguards that prevent emotional suppression." "Exactly," Noah said, pacing. The last thing we need is to create a society where people are afraid of their own feelings. Emotions are part of what makes us human. We can't let this technology take that away. The team worked tirelessly, running simulations and testing new theories. They developed a new framework for the interface, one that would allow users to control their emotional state but also prompt them when it was time to confront difficult emotions. They called it the emotional compass. It was designed to guide users back to their natural emotional state when they strayed too far from it. But even as they made progress, doubts lingered. Would anyone trust the system? Would they be able to navigate the complexities of human emotions without falling into dangerous territory? And would they be able to protect people from those who would exploit the technology for their own gain? Noah and Elon's work had caught the attention of more than just corporate investors. A select group of world leaders had begun to take interest. Governments saw the neural interface as a tool for managing mental health on a global scale, an opportunity to reduce the burden of mental illness, boost productivity, and even address political instability by controlling emotions in populations. Noah felt a chill at the thought. He had always believed that technology could be a force for good, but now he was starting to wonder, could they create something that was both safe and ethical? Or would the world soon demand something they weren't prepared to give? "We're on the verge of something big," Elon said one night as they sat together, discussing the project. "But I think we need to be careful. The way this could be used, it could be more than we can handle. Imagine if governments started using it to control their populations. What if they used it to suppress dissent, to stifle free thought?" Noah shuddered. The very idea terrified him. "That's what I've been afraid of." "We have to be proactive," Elon said. "We need to build the safeguards into the system in such a way that no one can abuse it. We need to make it clear that this is for personal, voluntary use, nothing more." Noah nodded, feeling the weight of their responsibility even more keenly now. The stakes had just gotten higher. They weren't just designing a tool anymore. They were designing a system that could affect the entire world. The team was ready to present their re-engineered interface to the world. They had built in the safeguards, the ethical checks, and the systems for voluntary use. But even as they prepared for the launch, Noah couldn't shake the feeling that the world wasn't ready for it. "I hope we're doing the right thing," he said to Elon one last time before the presentation. "I think we are," Elon replied, looking over the final specs. "But there's always risk, and there will always be people who want to misuse it. The question is, what are we doing to prevent that?" "We're doing everything we can," Noah said quietly. "And I think that's enough. It has to be." As they stood in front of the world, presenting the new interface, Noah realized one thing. The real challenge wasn't creating the technology. It was making sure it was used responsibly and that no one lost their humanity in the process. The day had finally arrived. After months of research, late-night meetings, and endless debates, the team was ready to unveil their re-engineered neural interface. The modifications were designed to give users the ability to control and adjust their emotional states while safeguarding against overuse, suppression, or exploitation. The interface was to be voluntary, personal, and designed with the user's autonomy firmly at its core. Noah, Elon, and the rest of the team gathered in the sleek, minimalist conference room, facing an eager group of journalists, scientists, and investors. The room buzzed with anticipation. After all the setbacks, the public was watching closely. The world had been waiting for this moment, and the weight of that responsibility was heavy on Noah's shoulders. "We believe we've created something that could help people live fuller, more emotionally balanced lives," Noah began, addressing the audience. "This technology doesn't control emotions, it amplifies them. It allows individuals to understand and manage their emotional states in a way that's empowering. Our goal is to provide people with the tools they need to thrive, not to change who they are." Elon stood beside him, nodding in agreement. "We've taken every precaution to ensure that this technology remains under the user's control. It can be used as a tool for personal growth, emotional health, and well-being. But we've built in safeguards to prevent misuse. The choice is always theirs." The crowd was silent for a moment, absorbing what they had just heard. Then, the questions started coming. "How do you prevent people from becoming emotionally numb, using the technology as an escape from difficult feelings?" one reporter asked. "That's a crucial point," Noah replied, stepping forward. We've designed the interface to help users confront and process emotions, not avoid them. The system includes prompts that encourage users to engage with their feelings in healthy ways. It's about enhancing emotional intelligence, not suppressing it. Is this a form of emotional manipulation? Another journalist pressed. No, Elon answered quickly. We've taken every measure to ensure the interface doesn't manipulate anyone's feelings. It's an aid, a tool, not a substitute for human experience. The questions continued, and Noah could feel the pressure mounting. He had always believed in the potential of their work, but now that it was out in the world, the reality of what they had created was beginning to sink in. This wasn't just a breakthrough, it was a revolution. And with that came an immense responsibility. In the days that followed, the neural interface became the subject of heated debate around the world. Some hailed it as a groundbreaking tool for mental health, a way to help people overcome anxiety, depression, and trauma. Others were deeply concerned about the ethical implications. In Washington, policymakers called for an emergency meeting to discuss the potential for abuse. Some argued that it could be used to manipulate voters, employees, or even entire populations. They feared that governments might use the technology to control citizens' emotions, making it a tool for political and social conformity. Meanwhile, a growing faction of neuroscientists and ethicists warned that the very concept of controlling emotions could lead to unintended consequences. Could the human experience really be enhanced by altering the brain's wiring? And if emotions could be amplified, what was to stop someone from becoming addicted to them? Or worse, using the interface to manipulate others for personal gain? In the midst of this, Noah couldn't shake the feeling that they had unleashed something bigger than they had anticipated. He sat in his office late one evening, his thoughts running wild. The pressure to prove that the neural interface was a force for good was overwhelming. But in the back of his mind, he was haunted by the question. Had they gone too far? A knock on the door broke his thoughts. "Come in," Noah called. Not looking up, it was Dr. Hall, her face drawn and tired. "We have a problem," she said, her voice low. Noah straightened in his chair. "What happened?" Dr. Hall took a seat across from him. "We've been getting reports of users experiencing emotional overload. The interface isn't just amplifying emotions, it's intensifying them in ways we didn't expect. Some users are struggling to manage the sheer magnitude of their feelings. Others have become dependent on the emotional highs it provides." Noah's stomach tightened. "What does that mean? Are people becoming addicted?" "It's too early to say," Dr. Hall replied. "But there are signs that the technology is having a destabilizing effect on some users. They're seeking constant emotional boosts, and when they try to take the interface off, they experience a kind of withdrawal. It's not physical, but the emotional impact is severe." Noah felt a cold chill run down his spine. This was the last thing they had anticipated. They had built the safeguards to prevent emotional suppression, but they hadn't considered what would happen if the technology gave users too much of a good thing. "We need to pull the plug on the current version," Noah said, his voice shaking. "We need to fix this." Dr. Hall nodded. "I agree, but we can't just stop the program altogether. There's too much at stake. We need to find a solution, and fast." As Noah and the team scrambled to address the issue, the media coverage took a darker turn. News outlets began reporting on the unintended side effects of the neural interface. Videos surfaced of people using the technology to manipulate their emotional states to an extreme degree, seeking feelings of euphoria or numbness in order to escape the difficulties of life. One viral video showed a group of teenagers laughing uncontrollably after using the interface to amplify their sense of joy. While it seemed harmless at first, closer inspection revealed that the group had been using the device for hours, chasing emotional highs with little regard for the consequences. In contrast, a disturbing report emerged from a group of adult users who had developed a dependency on the system. They couldn't function without the emotional boosts the interface provided, and when they tried to disconnect, they experienced deep emotional crashes. The media began calling it the high price of happiness. Critics argued that the interface wasn't just a tool, it was a potential weapon. A society of emotionally numb, overstimulated people was not the solution they had promised. Noah watched the reports in horror. He felt like he had failed. This wasn't the utopia they had envisioned. It was a nightmare waiting to unfold. As the public outcry grew louder, Noah retreated into himself. He had dedicated his life to understanding human emotion, to harnessing technology for the betterment of mankind. But now, it felt like he had opened Pandora's box. One evening, he found himself standing in front of the mirror, his reflection staring back at him with a sense of disbelief. Had he really believed they could control something as elusive and complex as emotion? He thought about the people who had trusted him, who had believed in the promise of the neural interface. He thought about Emily and Ryan, the test subjects who had faced the worst consequences of their work. They had been willing to take the risk, but now Noah wasn't so sure that risk was worth it. A sudden knock on his door brought him out of his thoughts. "Come in," Noah said, his voice hollow. It was Elon. "We need to talk," Elon said, his tone serious. Noah didn't need to ask what it was about. He could see the concern in Elon's eyes, the same doubt and fear that he had been carrying for days. "Yeah," Noah replied quietly. "I know. I've been looking at the data," Elon said, sitting down across from him. "We've made a mess of this, and now we're facing consequences we didn't even consider. What do we do now, Noah? Do we shut it all down? Do we walk away from this?" Noah swallowed hard. "I don't know if we can walk away, Elon, but we can't keep going like this either. We need to rethink everything. We've got to find a way to make this work before it destroys us." The weeks following the release of the neural interface were like a blur of escalating chaos. Each day, new reports flooded in about the negative side effects, emotional dependence, erratic behavior, and the widespread misuse of the technology. Every headline was a hammer blow to Noah's conscience. "Elon, I think we've made a huge mistake," Noah muttered one evening, staring at the flood of negative media coverage. "People are calling it an emotional addiction. And the worst part is, some of it is true. We didn't think through the consequences. We didn't account for how vulnerable people might be to this kind of power." Elon sat beside him, his hands clasped in front of him, deep in thought. He, too, had seen the media firestorm. "We were so focused on making it safe, on giving people control, that we didn't consider how easy it is to abuse something that powerful. We underestimated how fragile people's emotional balance can be." Noah ran his hands through his hair. "What now? Do we shut it down? What if it's already too late? We can't just take back something this invasive. We need to fix this," Elon replied, a steely resolve in his voice. "If we just pull the plug without a solution, it'll make everything worse. We have to find a way to address these issues head-on." But neither of them knew where to start. The tension among the team was palpable. The engineers, neuroscientists, and ethicists had been working around the clock to find a solution, but each new attempt at recalibrating the neural interface only seemed to lead to more questions. Dr. Hall, the lead neuroscientist, had been particularly vocal in expressing her concerns. "I'm worried, Noah," Dr. Hall said one afternoon in the lab. "We can't just keep patching this up. The more we adjust the system, the more complicated it becomes. We're tinkering with something that might be fundamentally broken." Noah sighed. "I know, but what's the alternative? We've already launched this technology on a global scale. We can't just let it spiral out of control. People are depending on it. People we've promised help. People who are becoming addicted to it," Dr. Hall pointed out sharply. "We're not just controlling emotions, we're controlling states of mind. The ethical ramifications are enormous, and I'm not sure we have a handle on them." Elon, who had been silently observing the conversation, spoke up. "We're not giving up, but we need to rethink everything. We need to go back to the drawing board. Start with the basics. What went wrong, and how do we fix it?" As Noah looked around the lab, he realized the cracks in the team's unity were deepening. Some members wanted to continue working on the technology, convinced it was still worth salvaging, while others were questioning whether they should abandon the entire project altogether. Everyone, it seemed, was afraid that they had crossed an irreversible line. Noah took a walk around the building to clear his head. His mind was heavy with doubt, the weight of the decision pressing on his chest. He'd dedicated years to perfecting the neural interface. It had been his dream to help people, but now he wasn't sure if they had done more harm than good. He stopped in front of a large glass window overlooking the city. It was a beautiful day, but he couldn't feel the warmth of the sun. All he felt was cold uncertainty. That's when he got a call from Emily. "Hey," she said softly, her voice a reminder of the humanity Noah was struggling to save. I've been reading the news. It's bad, huh? Noah sighed deeply. Yeah, it's worse than I thought. I thought we were doing something good. I thought we were helping, but now I'm not so sure. People are using it to escape their emotions, and others are getting addicted. It's all falling apart. Emily paused for a moment. Noah, you can't keep carrying this on your own. You have to remember why you started this. You wanted to change lives, right? To help people feel better, to give them control over their own emotions. I still believe that's possible, but you need to confront the problem head-on. Her words cut through the fog of his self-doubt, offering a brief moment of clarity. You're right, Noah said, his voice filled with a renewed sense of purpose. I can't give up now, but I have to be honest with myself. This is more complicated than I thought. It's not just about fixing the tech. We have to fix the way people are using it. Emily's voice softened. Maybe the key is not in controlling emotions, but in teaching people how to use the technology responsibly. They need to understand its impact on their minds and bodies. If we can give them the tools to do that, maybe there's hope. Noah was silent for a moment, thinking deeply. Emily's suggestion made sense. Maybe they had been too focused on creating a tool to control emotions, and not enough on how people would use it in their lives. It wasn't about removing all emotions. It was about understanding and balancing them. The next few weeks were a blur of intense work. Noah and the team dug deep into the fundamental principles of the neural interface, asking themselves hard questions about what they had missed. They started to focus on the psychological aspects of the technology rather than just its neural components. They began to design educational programs that would teach users about emotional balance and how to integrate the technology into their lives without becoming dependent on it. One of the key changes was introducing an emotional monitor feature. This tool would help users track their emotional highs and lows, offering insights into their emotional patterns. The system would also include educational prompts, explaining the psychological effects of overuse and how to maintain healthy emotional boundaries. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a start. We're not just designing a neural interface anymore, Noah said one day, addressing the team. We're designing a support system, a way for people to understand their emotions and use the technology responsibly. We can't just give people the power to control their emotions. We need to teach them why that power is important. Elon nodded in agreement. It's a mindset shift. We're not taking away their autonomy. We're giving them the tools to understand and manage their emotional state. They're in control, but they need to understand the consequences of that control. As the team worked on implementing these new ideas, Noah couldn't help but feel a sense of cautious optimism. They were heading in the right direction, but he knew they still had a long way to go. Just when Noah thought they were making progress, a new challenge emerged. Governments from around the world began to take a keen interest in the neural interface. Some saw it as a tool for social stability, a way to improve mental health on a national scale. But others had more nefarious ideas. We're getting pressure from multiple governments, Elon said one evening as he walked into Noah's office. They want to use the technology to regulate the emotional states of entire populations. They want to mandate its use in schools, workplaces, even prisons. Noah's stomach dropped. This is exactly what we feared. They'll turn it into a tool for control, not self-improvement. We can't let that happen, Elon replied firmly. We need to make it clear that this technology is for personal use only. It can't be politicized. Noah nodded, his mind racing. This was a turning point. They had created something incredibly powerful, but now it was being pulled in every direction. And if they weren't careful, it could slip through their fingers and become something they had never intended it to be. Noah had always known that creating something as revolutionary as the neural interface would draw attention, but he had never anticipated the sheer scale of pressure that came with it. In the weeks following the team's decision to recalibrate the technology and introduce a more responsible framework, a new problem emerged. Governments. They weren't just interested in regulating the interface, they wanted to control it. Reports came in from multiple countries that were pushing for mandatory integration of the neural interface into schools, workplaces, and even military training programs. The argument was simple. A society with controlled emotions, they claimed, would be a more productive, harmonious one. But as Noah and Elon quickly realized, there was a significant difference between encouraging responsible use and giving governments the ability to enforce emotional regulation on their citizens. "We've crossed a line," Noah said, pacing in his office one evening as he read an article detailing a country's proposal to mandate the interface for school children. "This isn't just about personal well-being anymore. This is about control." Elon was quieter than usual, his face serious as he looked at the article on Noah's screen. "It's worse than I thought. The tech was supposed to be a tool for empowerment, not a means of social manipulation." Noah stopped pacing, his mind racing. "We were so focused on fixing the technology's flaws that we didn't consider the global implications. The governments, they see it as a way to standardize emotional behavior, control depression, aggression, anxiety, hell, maybe even patriotism. The possibilities are endless." Elon leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "I never thought this would happen. But now that it's happening, we need to make a decision. Do we shut it all down? Do we pull the plug entirely?" Noah swallowed hard. "If we pull it now, we may never be able to fix the damage. We've already done good. Some people are using it to heal, to better understand themselves. I can't just let that go. But we also can't allow it to be used as a tool for oppression." The weight of the decision was overwhelming. As the media continued to criticize the growing misuse of the neural interface, Noah found himself reflecting on the core mission of their project: to empower individuals, to give people control over their emotional health in ways that were once unimaginable. But as the governments moved in, that mission seemed to be slipping through their fingers. "Noah, we need to take control of this narrative," Dr. Hall said one day as the team gathered in the lab. "We need to show the world that this technology is about personal autonomy, not political control." "I agree," Noah replied. "But how do we do that when entire countries are starting to implement it on a state level? We're not in control anymore. It's out of our hands." Elon spoke up, his voice firm. "The question is, do we let it fall into the hands of those who want to use it for control? Or do we fight for the values we believe in: responsibility, emotional autonomy, and freedom?" Noah stood silently for a moment, the full weight of the decision before him. On one hand, the technology had the potential to revolutionize mental health on a global scale, to help millions of people in desperate need of emotional support. On the other hand, it could also be twisted into something darker: a tool for social manipulation, a way to control not just the body, but the mind itself. Noah turned to Dr. Hall. "Can we stop them? Is it possible to prevent governments from implementing this without completely shutting it down?" Dr. Hall paused, considering the question. "We could put in safeguards, make the technology opt-in only, ensure that it remains under personal control. But that would mean we have to fight a battle on a global scale, not just with governments, but with the corporations that support them, and the public too. Once people start using it, they're not going to want to give it up." "No," Elon said with determination. "We don't shut it down. We fight for the autonomy of the people who use it. We show them that this technology isn't a tool for governments, it's a tool for personal empowerment. And if we can prove that, maybe we can turn the tide." In the days that followed, Noah and Elon launched an unprecedented public campaign. They partnered with mental health experts, psychologists, and neuroscientists to emphasize the benefits of the neural interface when used responsibly. They promoted a new Bill of Emotional Rights, which outlined the ethical framework for using the technology: voluntary use, transparency, and informed consent. The goal was clear: to demonstrate that the neural interface was about personal choice, not control. At the same time, they took a strong stance against any government or corporation that sought to misuse the technology. They used their platform to speak out, appearing on global news outlets and giving impassioned speeches about the potential dangers of a world where emotions were manipulated by external forces. "We've created a tool for personal growth," Noah declared during a televised interview. "But it's not meant to replace human experience. It's meant to enhance it. We can't let this become a tool for manipulation, for coercion. We must ensure that it remains in the hands of the people, not the state." Elon echoed his sentiments, speaking directly to the camera. "We have to remember the human element. This technology is powerful, but it's not infallible. It has to be used responsibly by those who understand it. The moment it becomes a tool for control is the moment it loses its soul." The campaign went viral. Supporters from all over the world began to rally behind them. Mental health advocates, civil rights groups, and ordinary citizens voiced their concerns about government intervention, using social media to share their personal stories of how the neural interface had helped them. But, as expected, not everyone was on their side. The governments and corporations that stood to gain from the widespread adoption of the technology pushed back hard. They argued that the technology could be used to eliminate mental health issues on a global scale, reducing crime, poverty, and social unrest. The debate raged on, with no clear resolution in sight. No one knew they were up against something much bigger than themselves. It wasn't just a battle for the future of their technology. It was a battle for the future of humanity's relationship with emotions. Just when Noah and Elon thought they were fighting this battle alone, a surprise ally emerged. Dr. Michaels, a prominent neuroscientist and one of the leading ethical voices in the scientific community. Dr. Michaels had been one of the early skeptics of the neural interface, but had since become an advocate for its responsible use. "I've been listening to the arguments on both sides," Dr. Michaels said during a press conference, "and I've come to realize that the potential of this technology to improve mental health is too great to ignore. But Noah and Elon are right. If it's misused, it could be catastrophic. That's why I'm lending my voice to their cause. We must ensure that the technology is used for the good of humanity, not as a tool of control." Her endorsement gave the campaign new momentum. With her reputation backing them, more scientists, doctors, and activists joined the movement to protect the neural interface from exploitation. Together, they created a global coalition focused on protecting the technology's ethical use, ensuring that it remained a tool for personal empowerment, not a vehicle for social manipulation. As the global debate continued to unfold, Noah realized that they had reached a critical crossroads. The future of their technology, and possibly the future of humanity's relationship with emotions, hung in the balance. They could either allow the governments and corporations to take control or fight to preserve the integrity of their vision. In the end, Noah knew that the decision was not just about technology, it was about trust. Trust in people's ability to handle the power of their own emotions, trust in their capacity for self-regulation, and trust in the team's ability to create something that could truly help without causing harm. The next few weeks would determine everything, and Noah was ready to face whatever came next. The global coalition Noah and Elon had worked so hard to build had gained significant traction. Public support was growing. Mental health advocates, ethical scientists, and ordinary people who had benefited from the neural interface rallied to their cause, reinforcing the message that technology should empower individuals, not control them. But the opposition was just as powerful. Governments, large corporations, and media outlets that stood to gain from the widespread use of the neural interface weren't backing down. In fact, they were becoming more aggressive. Every day, Noah and Elon found themselves in the midst of a full-blown media and political firestorm. The pressure was relentless. "We've got a new problem," Elon said one evening, pacing around the conference room where the team had gathered. "One of the world's largest tech companies has decided to throw its weight behind the governments that want to enforce mandatory use of the interface. They've been spreading misinformation, saying our technology is too dangerous to remain in private hands." Noah's heart sank. Misinformation? About what? "They're claiming it can cause brain damage, that it alters people's identities, that we're essentially erasing free will," Elon said. "The narrative they're pushing is that we're creating a generation of zombies, emotionless, mind-controlled automatons. They're turning the public against us," Noah muttered, his mind racing. "How are we supposed to fight this kind of media blitz? We've been transparent, we've been vocal about the ethical guidelines. How can they twist that into something dangerous?" Elon stopped pacing and looked directly at Noah. "We've done everything we can to explain ourselves. But now, it's clear that we're not just battling for the future of the technology. We're battling for the future of human autonomy itself." Despite their efforts, the world was dividing. People who had once been hopeful about the neural interface were now unsure. The media played on their fears, painting the technology as a weapon that could be used against them. The same people who had once clamored for emotional healing and self-understanding now questioned whether they had been wrong to embrace the interface in the first place. The debate reached a fever pitch when a major news outlet aired a controversial documentary that depicted the worst-case scenarios of the neural interface. Users who had become addicted, emotionally numb, or worse, emotionally manipulated by outside forces. The documentary featured testimonies from people who had experienced the darker side of the technology, painting a terrifying picture of what could happen if it fell into the wrong hands. "I can't believe they're doing this," Noah said, his voice laced with frustration as he watched the documentary. "They're twisting everything. They're making it look like we're the villains." Elon watched silently, his expression unreadable. "I know, but it's not just about us anymore. They've turned the technology into a symbol of something much bigger. It's not just about emotions anymore. It's about control. And that's why they're fighting so hard." Noah sank into a chair, feeling the weight of the battle pressing on him. "So, what do we do? Do we shut it all down? Do we give in?" Elon shook his head. "We can't. Not after everything we've built. But we also need to get ahead of this. We need to confront the fear they're spreading head-on. We need to show the world that this technology isn't dangerous in the way they're portraying it." In the face of growing opposition, Noah and Elon decided it was time for a bold move. They would make a public statement, a speech that would set the record straight and show the world the truth behind the neural interface. The speech would be broadcast globally, a final attempt to sway public opinion and expose the misinformation campaign for what it was. On the day of the speech, the tension in the room was palpable. The team had worked tirelessly to prepare, drafting talking points, gathering scientific data, and crafting a message that would resonate with people around the world. It was their last chance to turn the tide. Noah stood in front of the camera, his palms sweating as he adjusted his tie. He could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. This wasn't just about technology. It was about the future of human autonomy. The world was watching, and this was his chance to make things right. "Elon, are you ready?" Noah asked, his voice tense. Elon nodded. "Let's do this." The cameras began rolling, and Noah stepped forward. He took a deep breath, then began. "My name is Noah Carter," he began, his voice steady but impassioned. "And I stand before you today to address a question that has been plaguing the world. Is the neural interface a tool for empowerment, or is it a dangerous weapon waiting to be misused?" He paused, allowing the question to sink in. The weight of the words was not lost on the millions watching. For those of you who have been following our journey, you know that our goal from the very beginning was to create something that could change the world. A technology that could empower individuals to take control of their emotional well-being. We created the neural interface to help people who were struggling, people who needed guidance, people who needed to heal. He glanced at the screen where Elon was standing, nodding slightly, giving him the strength to continue. But what we never anticipated was how this technology would be twisted and misused. We never anticipated how fear, misinformation, and the pursuit of control could pervert something meant for good. Our technology was never meant to replace human experience, only to enhance it. And while we acknowledge that it's not perfect, we are committed to improving it. Elon stepped forward, his voice joining Noah's. "We can't ignore the challenges that come with any new technology. But we must also remember that fear of the unknown cannot dictate our future. This technology was never meant to be a tool for control, and it never will be. The moment it becomes that is the moment we lose sight of our mission." The two men stood side by side, their resolve clear. "We know that this is a delicate matter, but we are asking for one thing: the freedom to choose. This technology must remain in the hands of those who want it, not be mandated or regulated by governments or corporations who see it as a tool for power. We trust in the ability of people to use it responsibly, and we believe that people should have the right to make their own decisions about their emotional well-being." The speech concluded with a call to action. "We ask you, the people, to stand with us, to fight for your right to emotional autonomy, to fight for a future where we control our minds, our emotions, and our destinies." The response to the speech was immediate and overwhelming. Across the globe, people rallied behind Noah and Elon's message. The hashtag emotional autonomy trended worldwide as supporters took to social media to express their agreement. News outlets that had once criticized the technology now began to reconsider their stance, inviting experts to discuss the ethical implications of government interference. But it wasn't just the supporters who reacted. Governments that had been pushing for mandatory use of the technology now faced intense public pressure. Calls for transparency and accountability grew louder. The opposition didn't have the smooth, unchecked narrative it once did. It was no longer just about the technology, it was about the right to make choices about one's own mind. Still, the battle was far from over. Powerful interests remained entrenched, and the forces that sought to control the technology weren't backing down. Noah and Elon knew that they were only at the beginning of the final phase of this fight. The world had heard their message, but the forces of control were not easily defeated. This was no longer just about technology. It was about the future of human autonomy and freedom. As the global debate continued, one thing was clear. The future of the neural interface, and possibly the future of how humanity would relate to its own emotions, was in their hands. And they would not give up without a fight. Noah sat at his desk, staring out the window of his office. The sun was beginning to set, casting a golden glow over the city. The weight of the last few weeks was settling in. They had fought for emotional autonomy. They had battled misinformation, political pressure, and corporate interests. But now, with the world watching, the time for speeches and public campaigns had passed. The final decision was upon them. Elon had been in constant meetings with global leaders, trying to negotiate terms and find common ground. There had been moments of progress. Some governments had agreed to slow down their push for mandatory use of the neural interface, and a few corporations had started to back down. But the real test was about to come. The world's largest tech company had called for an emergency summit. They wanted a final resolution, and they had made it clear that they wouldn't accept anything less than full control over the interface's future. "This is it," Noah muttered to himself, standing up and pacing. "We either let them win, or we make the hardest decision of our lives." He wasn't sure which outcome would be worse. Letting the technology fall into the hands of those who would manipulate it for control, or pulling the plug entirely, knowing how many people had been helped by it. The day of the summit arrived. Noah and Elon flew to the meeting location, a private conference center in Geneva, where representatives from the global coalition, tech giants, and government officials had gathered. The stakes had never been higher. As Noah walked into the conference room, he could feel the tension in the air. The room was filled with powerful people, politicians, CEOs, and representatives from various nations, all looking to make a decision that would shape the future of the neural interface. Elon stood by his side, his face as serious as ever. "This is it, Noah," he whispered. "We can't let them take control." Noah nodded, but couldn't shake the feeling of dread gnawing at him. What if the people they were fighting for, the users, the supporters, the ones who had been healed by the interface, what if they had misunderstood the implications of this battle? What if, by fighting for freedom, they had inadvertently jeopardized everything they had worked for? A murmur spread across the room as the tech giant's CEO, Robert Geller, stepped to the front. Tall, composed, and ruthless, he exuded the kind of confidence that came with having everything to lose. His company had invested billions into the neural interface and was now ready to take control of its distribution, both for profit and, according to their argument, for the greater good. "We're here today," Geller began, "to find a resolution to the ongoing crisis surrounding the neural interface. We believe that the technology has incredible potential to benefit humanity, but we also believe that it needs to be regulated in a way that ensures its safe and responsible use. We can't leave it in the hands of untrained individuals. We must make this technology available on a global scale, and we must ensure that it is used for the benefit of all." His words were calculated, smooth, and confident. They resonated with those who had the most to gain from controlling the technology. But Noah and Elon knew better. This wasn't about responsibility. It was about power. When it was Noah's turn to speak, he stood tall, meeting the eyes of every person in the room. The tension was palpable. "We didn't create this technology to control people," Noah said, his voice strong but with an edge of sadness. "We created it to empower people, to give them the ability to understand and control their own emotions, to heal themselves, to make their own choices. And yes, it comes with risks, as does any technology. But the power to choose, the freedom to make that choice, must remain with the individuals who use it." He paused, letting the words sink in. "We are not here to debate the technology. We are here to debate the very nature of human freedom. We cannot allow a few powerful corporations and governments to take away that freedom under the guise of safety. People have the right to control their own minds. They have the right to make decisions about their emotional well-being. Elon stepped forward, his tone resolute. We have seen what happens when power is concentrated in the hands of a few. We've seen it in history: control of information, control of emotions, control of entire populations. We cannot allow it to happen again. If we let the neural interface become a tool of control, we lose everything. We lose the very essence of what it means to be human. For a moment, the room fell silent. The faces around the table were unreadable. Geller, the tech CEO, clenched his jaw, clearly frustrated but unwilling to show weakness. No one knew this was the moment. There was no turning back now. The decision would be made here, in this room, with the fate of the neural interface hanging in the balance. Just as Noah felt the weight of the decision pressing down on him, a surprise ally spoke up. Dr. Michaels, the neuroscientist who had once been a vocal skeptic of the neural interface, stood up. "I've listened to both sides," she said, her voice steady and calm. "And I agree with what Noah and Elon are saying. This technology, in the right hands, has the potential to revolutionize mental health. But it can't be used as a tool for manipulation. It has to remain in the hands of individuals, not corporations or governments." The room erupted in murmurs. Dr. Michaels had been one of the most respected figures in the scientific community, and her endorsement carried immense weight. With her support, the argument for individual autonomy gained even more ground. "Maybe we should consider," she continued, "a global framework for regulation, a way to ensure safety without taking away people's right to choose. There's a balance to be struck here. But it's not about taking control. It's about guiding people toward responsible use." Noah and Elon exchanged a look of relief. The room was shifting. There was a chance, however slim, that they might actually win this fight. The discussion continued for hours, with impassioned arguments on both sides. The global coalition, having heard both perspectives, was now ready to vote. The outcome would determine the future of the neural interface and, by extension, the future of human autonomy in the digital age. When the final vote was cast, the results were a mixture of both triumph and compromise. The neural interface would not be forcibly controlled by any government or corporation, but there would be strict regulations put in place to ensure its ethical use. The technology would remain under the control of the people who chose to use it, but safeguards would be established to prevent abuse. It wasn't a perfect victory, but it was a victory nonetheless. The right to emotional autonomy had been preserved, and the technology could still be used for its intended purpose: to empower individuals, to heal, to help. In the days that followed, the world slowly began to adjust to the new reality. Noah and Elon returned to their work, focused on improving the neural interface and ensuring that it would never again be misused. They had won the battle for emotional autonomy, but they knew that the fight to ensure its responsible use would never truly end. As Noah stood on the rooftop of their company's headquarters, looking out over the city, he couldn't help but feel a sense of quiet accomplishment. They had made it through the darkest days, had faced the toughest challenges, and had come out stronger on the other side. "Elon," he said, turning to his friend, "we did it." Elon smiled, a glint of satisfaction in his eyes. "No, we didn't. The people did. We just gave them the tools to fight for their own future." And with that, they turned their attention back to the work ahead. The work that would change the world, one emotion at a time. Hit subscribe and leave a comment with where you're watching from. This story might just spark a new beginning. What's one thing that always pushes you forward, even when things get tough?